Chapter 3246. Mengji Tower's 21st floor, Hongji Tower's 20th floor. Lin Feng's astounding battle record had shaken the entire primordial sea. Other than Absolute Beginning's primordial origin chaos universe, all the other primordial origin chaos universes were shocked by his strength. Even the completely sealed primordial origin chaos universe couldn't help but sigh. The Hongmeng Sea has an incredible genius. Yes, a super genius comparable to our king. Not bad, but I still think our king is stronger. He's been on the battlefield for a long time, so he'll definitely win in a real battle. That goes without saying. If it weren't for our king's indifference to fame and fortune, he would have already unified the Hongmeng Sea. What 5 world masters? Even together, they're no match for our king. The sealed Taichu origin chaos universe didn't mean that it didn't have contact with the outside world. They could also enter the Hongmeng world and know what happened in the Hongmeng Sea, but they couldn't leave the Taichu origin chaos universe. The experts of the Hongmeng Sea couldn't enter the Taichu origin chaos universe either. Taichu cultivators were arrogant. Although the Taichu origin chaos universe had suffered a great loss after the calamity of Taichu, they had the strongest expert of the Hongmeng Sea, the invincible Emperor Gu Huang. Because of this, they disdained to compete for supremacy in the Hongmeng Sea. The so-called 5 world masters were a joke in their eyes. There were 3 world masters in the Taichu origin chaos universe, and there were only 2 world masters in the Taichu origin chaos universe. Because of Gu Huang, the strongest world master. With Gu Huang's guidance and the super geniuses of the Taichu origin chaos universe, 3 world masters were considered few. If it weren't for the limited cultivation conditions of the Taichu origin chaos universe and its geographical environment being inferior to the other origin chaos universes, there would be more world masters. The Taichu cultivators worshipped their king, Gu Huang. Gu Huang had already reached the 20th floor of the Hongji Tower. He was trying to reach the strongest expert of the Hongmeng Sea, the controller of the Hongmeng Sea. Now, he was halfway there. When Gu Huang reached the top of the Great Zenith Pagoda, the Grand Beginning Origin Chaos Universe was celebrating madly. However, to their astonishment, after a short while, a cultivator from the primordial ocean actually reached the top of the 21st level of the Great Zenith Pagoda. Even their king couldn't reach the highest level of Mengji Tower. However, their shock was not over yet. Lin Feng continued climbing the Hongji Pagoda all the way to the 20th level. This amazing record was almost exactly the same as their king's, only in a different order. This was enough to show Lin Feng's strength. Although Grand Primes were prideful, under Gu Huang's influence, they were extremely respectful of the strong. The absolute strength Lin Feng had displayed had earned their approval. He was second only to their king, Gu Huang. I wonder where His Majesty and the 3 Lord Royal Guards went. Yes, King and the 3 King Guards have not left the Grand Beginning Origins chaotic universe for a long time. Did she go to see that Lin Feng? His Majesty has always been seeking defeat and has never met a worthy opponent. Now that he finally met Lin Feng, he must want to compete with him. In terms of strength, Lin Feng and His Majesty are at the same level, but they specialize in different things. It's a pity that we can't see this battle. So be it. His Majesty will definitely win. Hongmeng's 2 poles tower area. The battle in the 4-dimensional passageways was in full swing. The Netherkiller clan had never attacked so violently. The battle in the 4-dimensional passageways started at the same time. This time, it was as if they had agreed to attack the dimensional passageways in one fell swoop. To the Netherkiller clan, they didn't have to attack all 4-dimensional passageways. They only needed to attack one of them, and that was enough. By attacking any dimensional passageway, the Netherkiller clan's experts could continuously come through the dimensional passageway. With the Netherkiller clan's individual strength, the Hongmeng Sea art could not stop them. Now, the 3rd and 4th dimensional passageways were in danger. However, the 1st dimensional passageway had also exploded. This is troublesome. Chaos Dao Lord stood on the Rainbow Chaos boat, frowning deeply. The Netherkiller clan experts in front of him were bursting with killing intent. They wanted to slaughter all the experts in the entire Great Change Origin Chaotic Universe. Murderous. The Spring Hell King, who had been defeated by Lin Feng before, was murderous. The scars all over his body were connected to the demonic patterns, flickering with a dark golden luster. The nether energy in his body seemed to be burning, and his killing intent surged like a storm. He did not use his soul flame killing intent clone, but his murderous combat power was even stronger than his limits. Breaking extremity. The Nether Killer clan's strongest profound intent. The golden mark W between his eyebrows flickered with a demonic light. His soul was burning to the extreme. The profound intent of breaking extremity was to surpass one's limits and enter a new realm of combat. This was the Nether Killer clan's strongest power. Using the simplest virile as an example, a 9 Hell King's normal weight was the same as a World Lord's 100 virile. But after breaking extremity, it could reach 1,000 virile, more than 10 times. It was comparable to the strongest World Lord. This was just the virile's weight and the change in energy level. The real increase in combat power was even more terrifying. There were 2 great experts in the Great Change Origin Chaotic Universe, Chaos Dao Lord, who was at the threshold of the strongest World Lord, and 1,000 Blood Empress, whose cultivation had reached the sub-limit of Hongji Dao, could not stop Murderous even if they worked together. Murderous intent erupted. One of the 3 strongest 9 Hell Kings did not strive to improve himself. This time, the main attack of the first-dimensional passageway was Murderous. It alone occupied 1,000 virile. Together with the virile of the experts in the Great Change Origin Chaotic Universe, it had exceeded the first-dimensional passageway's load limit. But the first-dimensional passageway did not collapse. At this moment, a pair of strong hands under the dimensional passageway forcibly held it up. The strongest World Lord was striving to improve himself. The Nether Killer clan used Murderous intent as a sharp knife to pierce the first-dimensional passageway. Bang! Boom! 1,000 Blood Empress could not catch up with Murderous intent after breaking extremity at all. The difference in strength was obvious, and she could only rely on Chaos Dao Lord to hold him back. But Chaos Dao Lord was only at the threshold of the World Lord, and his combat power was comparable to an ordinary 9 Hell King. Previously, he could compete with Murderous intent because Murderous intent was hindered by Virile's weight and did not use his full strength. Moreover, Chaos Dao Lord had the strongest Hongmeng origin item, the Rainbow Chaos Boat. But now, facing Murderous intent at full strength, he could not stop it alone. Swoosh! 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 Murderous intent did not linger and went straight for the enemy. After breaking extremity, he had surpassed the limit. His combat power was even stronger than the strongest 9 Hell King, who had not broken extremity yet. Chaos Dao Lord could not stop him at all. Whoosh! Murderous intent passed through the area covered by the Rainbow Chaos Boat. The experts of the Great Change Origin Chaotic Universe were shocked. Once Murderous intent broke out of the first-dimensional passageway, the consequences would be unimaginable. Clang! Behind the first-dimensional passageway, a flying sword suddenly appeared. Chapter 32:47. Pung! The flying sword hit the Murderous aura squarely. 2 different forces erupted in an instant, forcing the Murderous aura that had broken through the encirclement back into the domain of the Chaos Dao Lord's 7-colored Chaos Boat. Everyone was stunned. Time seemed to stop in the first dimension passage. It was a sword that looked clumsy, but it was just right. How difficult was this sword? First, it was a long-range attack. Second, it was Murderous aura. After breaking Pinnacle, his speed and body technique had reached the pinnacle. Even Primal Chaos, Dao Monarch couldn't do anything to him. Finally, this sword didn't only hit the Murderous aura, but it was also quite powerful. Who was it? Who could use such a flying sword? He's finally here. Primal Chaos Dao Monarch seized the opportunity. Once again, Primal Chaos Dao Monarch enveloped the Murderous aura. Unlike last time, he was more cautious and confident this time, because he was behind him. Humph! Thousand Blood Empress snorted and snorted. Stubborn but soft-hearted guy. At the beginning of the war with the Nether Killer clan, Thousand Blood Empress had gone to the Primal Origin Chaotic Universe to ask for help. She hoped to meet Emperor Gu Huang and get his help. However, she was rejected, which made Thousand Blood Empress furious. Dang! The flying sword stopped steadily in the air, shining brightly as if an emperor had arrived. A proud and aloof figure stepped out. His entire body was filled with sharp sword energy, which seemed to have become one with the sword in his hand. The faint light was like the eyes of stars, containing powerful energy. Emperor's Sword, one of the most powerful Hongmeng origin items. Ordinary universe rulers couldn't recognize this sword, but Primal Chaos Dao Monarch and Thousand Blood Empress did. The man who wielded this Emperor's Sword also recognized it. It was a transcendent being standing above the clouds. Wu, the murderous aura of Breaking Pinnacle burst out and broke free from Primal Chaos Dao Monarch's seven-colored Chaos Dao Monarch's boat. His eyes flashed with golden light, and his muscles expanded. The murderous aura turned into endless power and shot toward the aloof figure. Another way of killing. Let's see if your ultimate killing is stronger or my innate destruction is stronger. Gu Huang moved. This time, it was a close-range attack. Xiantian level 9 Hongmeng Law of Destruction was one of the strongest powers in the Hongmeng Sea, and Gu Huang had raised it to the Xiantian level. The absolute power to reach the top of the 21st level of the Hongji Pagoda. On the other side, the one with murderous intent also walked the Tao of Slaughter. However, it was the Netherkill clan's most extreme form of slaughter. After burning one's soul to break through to the next level, he had entered a whole new realm. There was no difference between high and low, only the strong and the weak. Boom, boom, boom. The crazy impact of the force caused the entire dimensional passageway to tremble violently. Even the unstoppable Viral could not withstand this massive force. The Chaos Tao Lord and the Thousand Blood Empress did not interfere, as they knew Gu Huang's character very well. A proud and aloof emperor. He would never allow other cultivators to interfere in his battle. Gu Huang was even stronger. In Gu Huang's hands, the Emperor's Sword was able to display the absolute power of a Hongmeng origin item. The Xiantian level 9 Hongmeng Law of Destruction was able to suppress Gu Huang's killing intent. It was not because Gu Huang's slaughter realm was higher, but because of his strength. He was a world lord with murderous intent. Even if he used Break Extremity and reached the level of the strongest world lord, his opponent, Gu Huang, was a genuine strongest world lord. Pinnacle power. The Netherkill clan had rich battle experience. Gu Huang was the man who had single-handedly quelled Tai Shi's calamity. It seems like the Netherkill clan is only SOS. Gu Huang's Emperor's Sword emitted the aura of a king. The Origin Greatsword move came crashing down, but no move was better than any move. No matter how mysterious Gu Huang's movement technique was, he was still unable to break through Gu Huang's sword chi and was at a disadvantage. In the fourth dimension passageway, the Tai Chi Origin Chaotic Universe was completely suppressed. The Netherkill clan's advantage was too great. The Tai Chi Origin Chaotic Universe was guarded by the Hongmeng Sea's best defense, Dao Wuji. The infinite Tai Chi formation had a special ability to gather the strength of a group of cultivators to fight against Invincible. However, that was because Invincible had not used his true strength. The fourth dimension passageway's Viral had not reached a level where it could truly compete. But now it was different. Boom, pump. Every punch of Invincible of the masses seemed to strike the heart of the Tai Chi Origin Universe. The surging power caused the boundless Tai Chi formation to tremble. No matter how strong Dao Wuji was, even if the experts of the Tai Chi Origin Universe used all their strength, they still couldn't withstand the might of Invincible of the masses. He was one of the 3 strongest kings of 9 hells, and his reputation was not undeserved. He was the real deal. His soul ignition golden body alone was enough to dominate the battlefield. Once he used his soul flames, it would be even more terrifying. Dao Wuji's face was a little pale. He had already used all his strength to block Invincible's divine power, unless a miracle happened. Whoosh, whoosh, two figures, one green and one red, appeared from behind the fourth dimension passageway. The man was strong and sturdy. He had the face of a lion and the body of a horse. He had golden hair and a pair of strong bull horns. He held a giant hammer in his hand. The red figure was very petite and was less than a meter tall. Her small white feet stepped lightly on the shoulder of the Demon Clan expert. Her beautiful face was like a flower fairy. Her red silk dress was dreamy, and the staff in her hand shone with white light. Who was it? The cultivators of the Tai Chi Origin Chaotic Universe were all stunned. Dao Wuji's eyes flashed. The boundless Tai Chi formation opened a passageway, and the two entered instantly. Both of them were world lords. Pa! Two separate energies, but they were equally powerful. They were not inferior to Dao Wuji's at all. When they landed in the boundless Tai Chi formation, it was as if two needles had been injected into the heart. The Tai Chi Origin Chaotic Universe regained its strength. Oh! Invincible floated in the void. His domineering aura was about to destroy everything. Two more pieces of trash. A cold voice rang out. Invincible's power rose again. Golden light protected his body. His underworld power burned fiercely. Boom! The third dimension passageway was not much better than the fourth dimension passageway. Similarly, they suffered a crushing defeat and were in imminent danger. They stubbornly resisted, and the weight of their dimensional energy increased again and again, making it difficult for the powerhouses of the absolute beginning origin universe to resist. Ancestor Fan's injuries were even worse. The sword light was too strong. Even if he did not use breaking extremity, his battle strength was stronger each time. Another one who wants to die? Blade light and sword shadow narrowed his eyes and shot out a ray of light. He did not care about the figure that had appeared in the third-dimensional passageway. A mere world lord was nothing. I'll let you see what the strongest power of the Netherkill clan is. The golden W between the sword light's eyebrows flashed. Breaking extremity. Chapter 3248. Had Blade Light and Sword Shadow gone crazy? No, he hadn't. No expert from a Netherkill clan would go crazy in battle. They would go crazy, but rarely would they lose their rationality. This was the foundation of a fighting clan. It was different from the complete eruption of killing intent. Although the blade glints and sword shadows were able to break through the limits of Wang Zhong's attacks, they were able to suppress his strength by a full 50%. This was the same as when he fought in the first dimensional passageway, where he constantly suppressed his strength. Blade Light and Sword Shadow's precise control of his strength was one of the best among the kings of Nine Hells. In this aspect, if it was murderous chi, he would not be able to do it. Furthermore, there was another transcendental existence behind the third-dimensional passageway that was in charge of the overall situation. How could Hell King Hong Quan endure this? He was one of the three strongest kings of Nine Hells, and the only one who hadn't been able to construct a dimensional channel. Although he couldn't really participate in the battle, he had no problem helping Blade Light and Sword Shadow. Materializing willpower wasn't his forte. Moreover, the third-dimensional channel was constructed by Blade Light and Sword Shadow, not his willpower. However, the collapse of the materialized willpower came from inside and outside. The inner part was the channel itself, and the outer part was the pressure and weight of the dimensional space. The first dimensional channel was maintained from the inside, and how could he endure it from the outside? Hurry up, I can't hold on for long. How could he endure being in a dimensional space? When the dimensional energy landed on his body, even if he was strong, the burden was extremely heavy. However, this time, both he and the Netherkill clan were serious. Sword? Ha! You dare to draw your sword in front of me. Blade Light and Sword Shadow's eyes were filled with madness. While his blade slashed toward Fan Zhu, the sword in his hand fell toward the white-clothed swordsman. Two swords and two streaks of sword aura intertwined. Blade Light and Sword Shadow roared. Under the state of extreme break, he wasn't at a disadvantage at all. He blasted Fan Zhu and the white-clothed swordsman away. His sword light was dazzling, as if the heavens had descended. Get lost! Even with his strength suppressed, blade light and sword shadow's extreme break was still terrifying. Fan Zhu couldn't fight back. Although the white-clothed swordsman was strong, he was still a world lord. Wang Wei, Dujian, Green Bull, and Red Pheasant, who had appeared in the fourth-dimensional passageway, were the three royal guardians of the primal origins chaotic universe. They were all world lords who had been trained by Gu Huang. After experiencing the calamity of Tai Shi origin, Hongming's energy was thin and the cultivation grounds were poor. All the world lords, including Gu Huang himself, walked the path of Hongming. Qi, the single sword attack, had its own style. Although his swordsmanship had yet to reach the origin level, the ninth step Hongming's law of self was truly at the great perfection level. It had fused with his self-created swordsmanship, making it even more powerful than ordinary origin-level techniques. Eternity, the same ninth order Hongming law, the same great perfection. Unlike Dujian, who was proficient in offense, Fan Zhu was proficient in defense, and their coordination was extremely good. Of the three royal guards, Dujian was the most proficient in offense. Therefore, he was sent by Gu Huang to guard the third-dimensional passageway. Originally, it was indeed an exquisite combination. With the strength of Fan Zhu and Dujian, they should have been able to defend the third-dimensional passageway. However, no one had expected the extreme break to be unleashed. Ever since the Netherkill clan had built the dimensional passageway, they had never used extreme break. But this time, the murderous aura first surged, and then the saber light and sword shadows were unleashed. He displayed his true strength, the strongest profound meaning of the Netherkiller clan that could crush experts of the same level. Extreme break. The soul and body were perfectly combined in another form. The power of the soul was completely added to the physical body, and the power and control of the Netherworld power had surpassed a level. The King of Nine Hells, who had the strength of a world lord, could unleash the strongest power of a world lord when using extreme break. Clang! Boom! Although the extreme break power was suppressed by the blade light and sword shadow, they still had the upper hand in a 1 versus 2 situation. Fan Zhu was already injured, and he had just started to cooperate with Dujian. The blade light and sword shadow were multitasking, and after using extreme break, they could do as they pleased. This was what the blade light and sword shadow were good at. The blade and sword shadow had different concepts, and the blade light and sword shadow were at different levels. They were like two blade light and sword shadow attacking at the same time. So powerful, too powerful. Is this the true strength of the blade light and sword shadow? Chairman Egio, the war god, Pope, and other Taichu experts were also paying attention to the situation here while fighting the Netherkill clan. This was a confrontation between the top forces of both sides. Once Fan Zhu was defeated, it would be equivalent to announcing the Taichu's defeat. Other than Fan Zhu, there were no other Taichu practitioners who could block the blade light and sword shadow. It was a fierce battle. When enemies met on a narrow path, the courageous would win. The blade light and sword shadow were not only more courageous, but also more powerful. If it was a 1 versus 2 situation, it would be a headache to multitask. However, it was a simple task for the blade light and sword shadow. Wave after wave of attacks, relying on the powerful effect of extreme break, the blade light and sword shadow forcibly broke through Fan Zhu's restraint. While severely injuring Dujian, they sped to the other end of the dimensional passageway. They did not want to continue fighting. It was not that they could not kill Fan Zhu or Dujian, but that the dimensional passageway was in imminent danger. No matter how powerful Dujian's spatial attainments were, he could only hold on for a while. Therefore, the blade light and sword shadow needed to pass through the dimensional passageway at the fastest speed possible. As long as they passed through the dimensional passageway and entered the Hongmeng Sea, they could attack or retreat. The blade light and sword shadow could freely display their full strength. 100% extreme break. Whoosh! At the end of the dimensional passageway, the blade light and sword shadow's distorted golden W became even more dazzling. His eyes flashed with joy. The credit was his. He had not been able to constantly improve himself and become invincible, but he had done it. Behind the blade light and sword shadow, Dujian chased after him at his fastest speed. Fan Zhu had used all of his methods, but was still unable to stop the blade light and sword shadow. The war god, leader Tianze, chairman Egio, and the rest sighed in sorrow. Their strength was undoubtedly one level lower. Not to mention stopping them. If the blade light and sword shadow wanted to take their lives, it would be as easy as flipping their hands. Once the blade light and sword shadow broke through their encirclement, the dimensional passageway would be lost. At that time, there would be no end to their troubles. In the entire Hongmeng Sea, which expert would be able to kill the blade light and sword shadow when he was at full strength? Qi, a powerful force broke through the dimensional passageway. The blade light and sword shadow avoided Dujian's sword. Under Fan Zhu's all-out defense, their figures flashed, disappearing into the dimensional passageway. Within the dimensional passageway, the Taichu practitioner's complexion was deathly pale. Dujian's eyes were also dazed. A crushing defeat. The entire strength of the Taichu was unable to stop the blade light and sword shadow. What is this place? The blade light and sword shadow had just exited the dimensional passageway when they revealed an excited expression. However, they had landed on a lake filled with sparkling stars. It was boundless, dreamy, and blurred. Hongmeng Sea. The blade light and sword shadow looked around, his eyes suddenly widening. Not far away, a familiar figure appeared from the lake. It was incomparably familiar. It's you. The blade light and sword shadow gnashed his teeth, unable to restrain his anger. Chapter 32:49. Lin Feng. At this moment, he was floating above the blue frost fairy dust lake with a calm expression. He was very familiar with Lin Feng. In the entire Hongmeng Sea, who did he hate the most? Without a doubt, it was Lin Feng. Time and time again, he obstructed him, disturbed him, wasted his time, and absorbed his will. However, he always hid and never faced him head-on. When Blade Light and Sword Shadow wanted to fight with all their strength, Lin Feng disappeared without a trace. Blade Light and Sword Shadow had always been indignant about not being able to kill Lin Feng in the previous battle. New hatred and old hatred surged in his heart. Ha! Ha! Today this king is really too happy. Blade Light and Sword Shadow laughed heartily, the war blade and sword in his hand clanging nonstop. The distorted W mark on his forehead shone even brighter than when he was in the dimensional passage. First, he broke the dimensional channel and made a great contribution. Then, he found Lin Feng, who he could not find. To Blade Light and Sword Shadow, was there anything more satisfying than this? As for Lin Feng's strength, Blade Light and Sword Shadow did not put him in his eyes. The only reason he could not kill Lin Feng that day was because he did not use Breaking Limit. Now, he was even stronger than before. Breaking Limit at 100% of his strength was comparable to the strongest world lord. Killing a Hongmeng Sea practitioner was as easy as flipping his hand. I hope you can still laugh later. Lin Feng did not care about Blade Light and Sword Shadow's contempt. As the strongest Hongmeng source, the blue Frost Fairy Dust Lake did not have much of an effect. Lin Feng did not need it to consume too much energy. Temporarily trapping Blade Light and Sword Shadow was enough. Arriving slightly later than Gu Huang, Lin Feng was just about to enter the third-dimensional passageway when he suddenly sensed the arrival of a familiar aura. Using the blue frost celestial dust lake, he managed to catch a glimpse of the Blade Light and Sword Shadow. Arriving early was not as good as arriving at the right time. Blade Light and Sword Shadow wanted to kill Lin Feng. How could Lin Feng not want to compete with Blade Light and Sword Shadow? The current him was no longer the same as before. Cut the crap and die. Blade Light and Sword Shadow were too lazy to talk nonsense with Lin Feng. No matter how he looked at Lin Feng, he hated him. The power of Extreme Break filled his entire body. and underworld chi surged out as he executed two source-grade sword techniques at the same time. He still had a lot of things to do and didn't want to waste too much time on Lin Feng. Those who stood in his way, he would just kill them. However, things did not develop as Blade Light and Sword Shadow had expected. Taichu Origin. Lin Feng activated the strongest power of his battle saber, Snow Necklace, and clashed head-on with the saber lights and sword shadows. It was the same saber move, but it contained a completely different power. The Path of Hongji, which was at the peak of the Path of Meng, was now displaying a power that surpassed the limits of the Path of Meng. Hongmeng Dimensional Body, second stage. Boom! Viral instantly suppressed the underworld power of the saber light and sword shadow. The newly born internal universe combined with the blue frost immortal dust lake gave the saber light and sword shadow a great deal of pressure. This power, Blade Light and Sword Shadow's chest felt stuffy, and his face turned pale with fright. Not only was he unable to suppress Lin Feng at full power, but he was also forced to retreat. Lin Feng's strange power was even stronger than before, and his physical fitness had increased by an entire level. He can break the limit too? This was the first thought that flashed through Blade Light and Sword Shadow's mind. Lin Feng's current strength had suddenly increased explosively, and it was extremely similar to breaking the limit. No, it's an evolution. Very quickly, Blade Light and Sword Shadow felt Lin Feng's tyrannical aura, which was completely different from before. His vitality level was exuberant and increased, causing Blade Light and Sword Shadow's expression to turn grave, and he no longer underestimated Lin Feng. This was a very dangerous opponent. Lin Feng displayed his saber moves, causing Blade Light and Sword Shadow to feel as if they were facing an invincible army. The pressure was extremely great. Boom, boom, boom. Lin Feng's attack was completely suppressive. It was extremely overbearing, and it was very similar to Invincible's saber move. They were of the same lineage, and the move origin of Tai Chi originated from Invincible. Lin Feng was unstoppable when he displayed the Defying Heart's secret technique. Blade Light and Sword Shadow were very strong, and their strength was very strong. Breaking the limit was even stronger. However, Lin Feng was now a level higher than him in all aspects, especially the suppression of energy, causing Blade Light and Sword Shadow to be at a loss. Viral. In the previous battle, Lin Feng's Viral was only at the first stage, and Blade Light and Sword Shadow could still dodge. Now, the second stage of Viral was not only more powerful, but also much more powerful. In terms of energy consumption, Blade Light and Sword Shadow was the one at a disadvantage. How could this be? Blade Light and Sword Shadow himself was very puzzled. Last time, when he did not use breaking the limit, they were evenly matched. This time, when he used 100% of his strength in breaking the limit, he was suppressed everywhere. I will lose. Blade Light and Sword Shadow clenched his teeth, completely not expecting this. Originally, he thought that after breaking through the dimensional passageway, everything would be smooth sailing, and he would be able to fly freely, establishing a solid foundation for the Netherkill clan to conquer the Hongmeng Sea. Who would have thought that he would be trapped by Lin Feng, unable to move? It was as if he was shackled in the lake, unable to break free. Not only were the Saber Lights and Sword Shadow shocked, but the two experts outside the lake were also shocked. Fan Zhu Dujian. They would not allow Blade Light and Sword Shadow to escape. No matter the price, even if they had to die, they would make him stay. Blade Light and Sword Shadow chased after him. However, Fan Zhu and Dujian did not enter the Blue Frost Fairy Dust Lake, but they could still see it. It was as if they were separated by a layer of enchantment, standing outside the lake, and clearly watching a peak confrontation. Lin Feng against Blade Light and Sword Shadow. Blue Frost Fairy Dust Lake was controlled by Lin Feng, and naturally, he could control it freely. Lin Feng could not allow Fan Zhu and Dujian to enter, but he could also allow them to watch the battle. Letting them watch the battle was to prevent them from being suspicious. He did not want them to join the battle, not because they were not strong enough, but because Lin Feng was completely confident. Blade Light and Sword Shadow were left behind. Hongji Pagoda, 20th level. Mengji Pagoda, 21st level. No matter how much the cultivators of the Taishe origin chaotic universe worshipped Gu Huang, no matter how arrogant they had to admit that Lin Feng was strong. Even if he could not be compared to Gu Huang, he was already qualified to compete. In fact, Lin Feng was stronger than what the Taishe cultivators knew. This was because Lin Feng's Meng Jidao realm had not reached the 21st level of Mengji Pagoda, but had completely surpassed it. Boom! Lin Feng used his body, which the Hongmeng Sea experts were not good at, to suppress the strongest body of the Netherkill clan. Fan Zhu and Du Jian stared with their eyes wide open. He was Lin Feng? So strong. What happened in the 20th era? Although Fan Zhu knew that Lin Feng had already taken over the Taichu origin chaotic universe, the strength that Lin Feng displayed at this moment still shocked him. Compared to Fan Zhu's shock, Du Jian was even more shocked. He, who had originally been somewhat disdainful of Lin Feng, was now completely convinced by Lin Feng's tyrannical strength. He and Fan Zhu could not fight back at all, but Lin Feng had beaten him until his head was full of bumps and he could not move. The strongest profound intent of the Netherkill clan, breaking pinnacle, the multitasking, and the sword shadows had all been beaten into scrap metal. What kind of monster is this? His body is even stronger than the Netherkill clans, and he's only an almighty? Du Jian was speechless. Lin Feng's strength was completely beyond his understanding. Chapter 3250. Intense battles were taking place on all four fronts. Gu Huang and Murderous Qi in the first-dimensional channel, Invincible Man and the three World Masters in the fourth-dimensional channel, and Lin Feng and Blade Light and Sword in the third-dimensional channel. May I ask? Fan Zhu looked at the white-clothed swordsman beside him. Genesis, Du Jian. Du Jian replied coldly, as if he was 1,000 miles away from him. Many thanks. Fan Zhu did not mind Du Jian's coldness and nodded slightly. In the past, the four great origins chaotic universe had given up on Genesis during the calamity of Genesis. Now, it was rare for Genesis experts to repay evil with good. Du Jian did not look at Fan Zhu. His gaze was fixed on the battle in the Blue Frost Immortal Dust Lake. A battle of this level was very attractive. Is he Lin Feng of your Taichu? Du Jian suddenly asked, his voice no longer as cold as before. Yes, he is the hope of our Taichu. Fan Zhu looked at Lin Feng like a father looking at his own child. Now, he's also the hope of the Hongmeng Sea. Du Jian did not refute, even though he worshipped their king, Gu Huang, the most. However, the strength that Lin Feng had displayed had deeply convinced him. Even if Du Jian was unwilling to admit it, he knew that if the one fighting now was their king, he would only be able to fight Blade Light and Sword to such an extent. He is really strong. Du Jian's voice was filled with affirmation and reverence. Du Jian and Blade Light and Sword Light had exchanged blows before. Blade Light and Sword Light had even suppressed their strength in the third-dimensional channel, but they had still managed to heavily injure him. Only after fighting did he know how strong Lin Feng was. Blade Light and Sword Light were completely at a disadvantage. Not only were his injuries not light, but his soul ignition had also intensified. The battle had dragged on, and his peak state had already passed. Blade Light and Sword Light's strength was slowly declining, and the situation was even more dangerous. However, Lin Feng's strength had not decreased at all. His advantage was even more obvious. Control the field. Only now did Fan Zhu realize that Lin Feng was not using his full strength. Instead, he was controlling the situation, slowly nibbling away at the Saber Light and Sword Shadow's strength, giving them hope instead of despair. With the strength of Saber Light and Sword Shadow, if he really broke out in the state of Broken Extreme, he could easily escape. Lin Feng wanted to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Du Jian understood Lin Feng's intentions. His blade and sword shadows had already entered the Hongmeng Sea. Once he escaped, there would be no end to his troubles. With his strength, he could turn the Hongmeng Sea upside down. I'm afraid it won't be that easy. Fan Zhu was somewhat worried. Yes, Du Jian replied. Under the gaze of the two world lords, Blade Light and Sword Shadow had also realized their own disadvantage and the weakness of the broken limit state. No matter how strong their power was, there would be a time when they would be exhausted. When they were unable to defeat Lin Feng head-on, Blade Light and Sword Shadow chose to temporarily avoid him. Every king of 9 hells had experienced countless battles. There were wins and losses. If they could win, they could give it their all. If they could not, it would not be too late to wait until they were stronger to take revenge. Blade Light and Sword Shadow had indeed done their best. Under the broken limit state, they even used Soul Flame Cold Ice, but they still could not gain the upper hand. He knew that today's battle would be difficult to gain an advantage. This little guy from the Hongmeng Sea was much stronger than the last time he fought with him. Break! Soul Flame Cold Ice could not be controlled accurately. Soul Ignition's 5th and 6th extremities required perfect control at the same time. Unless he was at the level of invincible and how to endure, Blade Light and Sword Shadow could not do so. However, he did not need perfect control. The Soul Flame Cold Ice's target was not Lin Feng, but this blue lake domain that contained astonishing energy. No matter where he attacked, it would be the same. Ka! Ka! The blue Frost Fairy Dust Lake was instantly frozen, and the lake's energy was frozen. Lin Feng had not yet reached the Great Circle, so he could not do much against Blade Light and Sword Shadow's attacks on the blue Frost Fairy Dust Lake. However, he had more than one Hongmeng source item. The blue Frost Fairy Dust Lake was the strongest Hongmeng source item. However, in Lin Feng's hands, it could only display the power of a Hongmeng source item at most. Lin Feng also had another control-type Hongmeng source item in his hands. He had already reached the Great Circle. 100 Million Wheel 8 Front Formation. It bloomed on the blue Frost Fairy Dust Lake. The strongest Hongmeng source item could contain the Hongmeng source item. Although the power of the two was about the same, the strongest Hongmeng source item was of a higher level. Qian, Kuan, Zhun Sun Can Li Jin Dui. The 8 basic abilities combined into one, and the 800 million wheel worlds combined into one. Lin Feng's current control was even more perfect than before, especially his understanding of Tai Chi. The 8 worlds turned into 8 strange symbols, and the light blue flames burned fiercely. The 8 trigrams were extremely powerful, and they enveloped Blade Light and Sword Shadow. Damn it, there's more! Blade Light and Sword Shadow gnashed his teeth. What he hated the most were the endless treasures of the Hongmeng Sea cultivators. Previously, Fanzu's treasures had given him a headache, and now, Lin Feng's treasures gave him an even bigger headache. One treasure after another. Moreover, the power of each treasure was not small. Just how many were there? Boom! Blade Light and Sword Shadow's great sword slashed down on the 100 million wheel 8 front formation. Lin Feng's attacks followed closely behind, and during the process, each wave of attacks was stronger than the last, forcing Blade Light and Sword Shadow's energy to be rapidly depleted. Following the Heart Secret technique, Lin Feng alternated between using Defying Mind and Following Mind. Now, his physical strength was firmly in the upper hand, and Blade Light and Sword Shadow's breaking limit had weakened a lot. Moreover, he almost did not fight head-on, but wanted to escape. In such a situation, Following Mind was more suitable. With the increase in realm and the increase in control, the advantage of a mind cultivator was to adapt to the situation, to choose the most suitable state for the battle, to deal with different enemies and the different battle states of the enemy. How did I become stronger? Blade Light and Sword Shadow felt it the most directly. Not only did the array's restrictions become stronger, but the pressure from the blue lake outside also increased. It took more effort for the Soul Flame Ice to seal the huge lake. Go! Blade Light and Sword Shadow did not have any second thoughts. He clearly knew the current situation. If he did not leave now, he would not be able to. The Hongmeng Sea cultivator in front of him, who had once secretly absorbed his will energy, was no longer the sneaky little fellow of the past, but a super powerhouse comparable to him. No, it was an existence that was stronger than him. Burn! Blade Light and Sword Shadow unleashed the strongest state of breaking limit. His will was completely unleashed, and the twisted golden W between his eyebrows emitted a scorching light. Blade Light and Sword Shadow's entire body was covered in a layer of golden light, and his combat strength reached the limit in an instant. He seemed to be even stronger than when he was in his peak state. What? Fan Zhu and Du Jian, who were watching the battle from outside, were shocked. They did not expect Blade Light and Sword Shadow to be hiding such powerful strength. For a moment, they were shocked, and their expressions turned serious. The Nether Killer Clan's King of 9 Hells was too terrifying. However, at this moment, the golden light shrouded by Blade Light and Sword Shadow seemed to have been ignited and instantly exploded with a bang, stunning everyone. Even Blade Light and Sword Shadow's eyes were bloodshot and filled with horror. Soul Attack. Fan Zhu was stunned. Lin Feng, you're unfathomable. Du Jian was speechless. Chapter 32:51. The sharper it was, the more fragile it was. Blade Light and Sword Shadow's soul had already been burned to the extreme. His final outburst seemed powerful and invincible, but it was actually an arrow at the end of its flight. His outburst was to escape, not to fight. If his opponent was Fan Zhu or Du Jian, Blade Light and Sword Shadow would be able to escape successfully. Unfortunately, his opponent was Lin Feng. When the will of instantiation reached perfection, the perception of a mental cultivator was extremely sharp. He could control the entire battle. Blade Light and Sword Shadow's every move was within Lin Feng's calculations, including the extent of his soul burning and his current state. Trump card? No, it was just a deathbed struggle. Boom! The terrifying power of the Genesis source displayed Lin Feng's tyrannical strength that could crush the Saber Lights and Sword Shadows. If Lin Feng had used his soul attack in the normal state of breaking limit, he probably wouldn't have been able to do anything to the Saber Lights and Sword Shadows. Instead, he would have been injured instead. Now, Blade Light and Sword Shadow's soul burning was like a layer of golden film, not a solid golden substance. It pierced through. Bang! Blade Light and Sword Shadow's soul aura was like a balloon, quickly dissipating. Even if soul burning was at the end of its descent, the soul shock would not be so serious. After all, the Netherkill clan soul was special and powerful. We won. Blade Light and Sword Shadow, it's over. Fan Zhu and Du Jian were shocked. They did not need to sense. They could see Blade Light and Sword Shadow's current state just by looking. The outburst just now was indeed terrifying, but after being hit by Lin Feng's soul shock, Blade Light and Sword Shadow could no longer escape. With 2 layers of domain and Lin Feng's power suppression, Blade Light and Sword Shadow could not escape. Especially Soul Shock, it was the best method to kill. The strength of the Netherkill clan was that they had no weaknesses. Their soul was terrifyingly strong. However, Lin Feng could deal a fatal blow to their strong point. Clang! Boom! Blade Light and Sword Shadow did not escape. There was no fear in his eyes. His body that was full of scars started to attack at full strength. Netherworld power fused into his body and golden light shrouded him. The W mark between his eyebrows was faintly discernible, as if it was about to shatter. The burning of the soul could no longer support the extreme break, but the Blade Light and Sword Shadow did not retreat. Instead, they chose to fight to the end. He knew that he would definitely lose today's battle, and he also knew that he would not be able to escape death. As a warrior, he would choose the most glorious way to die on a battlefield. Boom! The battle saber, Snow Jewel, fell, and the endless virile crushed the Saber Light and Sword Shadows. The exhausted Saber Light and Sword Shadows fought to their last bit of strength. The golden light between his eyebrows had already dissipated, and his natal weapon gradually dimmed. Following the disappearance of its master's life force, it no longer had any luster. Saber Light and Sword Shadows flashed as he died in battle. A true warrior. Lin Feng was expressionless as he looked at the corpse of the Sword Shadow. Although they were enemies and not friends, Lin Feng still respected the spirit of the Netherkiller clan. The first king of 9 hells had fallen. To the powerful Netherkiller clan, Losing a king of 9 hells was not a big deal. For countless eras, many Netherkiller clan experts who had comprehended the mysteries of the extreme break had fought for the position of king of 9 hells. After one fell, the second and third would appear. However, to the war between the two-dimensional worlds, this was a milestone. The first to fall was not the world master of the Hongmeng Sea, but the Netherkiller clan, who had always had the upper hand, the king of 9 hells, who was extremely good at fighting. Moreover, not only was the king of 9 hells the first to enter the Hongmeng Sea, but he was also the one who built the third-dimensional passage. His fall meant that the third-dimensional passage could no longer be strengthened and maintained. The Netherkiller clan would lose one of the four-dimensional passages that entered the Hongmeng Sea. This was a major breakthrough in a battle. The blue frost fairy dust lake disappeared, and everything returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. However, the battle just now was clearly seen by the two world masters. Beautiful! Fan Zhu's long purple beard fluttered, and he revealed a kind smile. Whether it was seeing Lin Feng's growth or Blade Light Sword's fall, it was very satisfying. Wonderful! Du Jian looked at Lin Feng with reverence and could not help but praise. Lin Feng smiled. Fan Zhu naturally recognized him, but it was the first time Du Jian had seen him. However, Lin Feng did not need to guess to know where this world master who had suddenly appeared came from. How is the situation now, Senior Fan Zhu? Lin Feng did not waste any time. Seeing Blade Light Sword appear in the area of the Twin Towers of Hongmeng proved that the current situation in the dimensional passage was very tense. Danger is imminent, and there is no time to delay. Fan Zhu's short words explained the current situation, and then briefly introduced the current situation of the four-dimensional passages to Lin Feng. Although they were in different dimensional passages, there was a special connection between the world masters of the 5 great worlds. Now, the Hongmeng Sea was facing a huge catastrophe. Lin Feng's expression was serious. The situation was more serious than expected. The Netherkill clan was obviously serious this time. The simultaneous attack of the four-dimensional passages was premeditated, and they did not give the Hongmeng Sea any chance to breathe or provide reinforcements. Fortunately, it was only Blade Light Sword that broke through. Lin Feng nodded. If it was one of the 3 strongest kings of 9 hells who broke through, it would be over. Although Lin Feng was confident in his own strength, he was not confident that he could deal with the strongest world master in the broken state. Perhaps even if he and Gu Huang joined forces, they would not be a match. Leave this to me. Lin Feng made a prompt decision and said to Fan Zhu and Du Jian, after destroying the third-dimensional passage, I will rush to the other dimensional passages to provide reinforcements. Okay. Fan Zhu and Du Jian only exchanged a glance before leaving. They were all world masters. No matter which dimensional passage they entered, they would be a great help. Even if they could not overpower the Netherkill clan, Viral's burden was enough to give the Netherkill clan a headache. As for Lin Feng, on one hand, Hongmeng Viral had consumed a lot of energy after a fierce battle and needed to enter the dimensional space to recover. On the other hand, although Blade Light Sword had fallen, the third-dimensional passage would not collapse immediately and would at least take some time. Although it would not be long and would be destroyed by Viral soon, the war was in full swing. If the other kings of 9 hells from the Netherkill clan used it, it would be a very troublesome matter. For the other world masters, it was almost impossible to destroy the dimensional passage. But Lin Feng could. He had absorbed the energy of the dimensional passage before, and now that the Hongmeng dimensional body had entered the second stage, his strength had become stronger in all aspects. There were even several ways to destroy the dimensional passage. Hua! Lin Feng entered the third dimensional passage. His figure flashed and instantly arrived at the most intense part of the battle. The Taichu experts, led by the army god, Chairman Yi Jiao, and leader Tianze, were crazily fighting with the Netherkill clan's helm masters and marshals. Lin Feng's sudden arrival stunned the Taichu experts. In particular, Pope's face was pale. Chapter 3252. Pope knew that Lin Feng was safe because not long ago, his connection with the will of the heavenly way had been completely severed, including the power given by the will of the heavenly way. His strength had dropped by a whole level. Not only him, but also the candlelight and sword-kill guardian gods. The Taichu Inquisition protected the Taichu and relied on the Taichu. There was only one possibility for the disappearance of the will of the heavenly way, which was that it had been possessed. What they were most afraid of had happened in the end. After that, Pope and the others were worried that Lin Feng would come to them sooner or later, because when Exile Master had returned, and what had happened in between was self-evident. Although when Exile Master didn't say anything, everyone knew. Pope didn't leave. Although the Hongmeng Sea was vast, there was no place for him to stay. He had his pride and dignity. He wouldn't leave, even if he knew that Lin Feng would appear in front of him one day. Boom! Lin Feng's attack leaped past the Pope and directly killed a Nether Killer Marshal. Then, a powerful force from his battle saber enveloped the Nether Killer Helm Master and devoured him. Entering the Netherworld, Golden Body and Soul Flame were all useless in front of Lin Feng. His absolute power surpassed everything. Lin Feng's appearance was like a tiger in a flock of sheep, quickly killing the Netherkill race experts one by one. The army god, Chairman Egio, and leader Tianze were all stunned. They were all injured and barely managed to resist the continuous attacks of the Netherkill Lord, but they were in danger. But these so-called elites of the battle clans were like sheep waiting to be slaughtered in front of Lin Feng. They couldn't resist at all. The gap was too big. It wasn't just the gap between the Netherkill race and Lin Feng. The gap between them and Lin Feng was like heaven and earth. In a few breaths, the Netherkill race experts suffered heavy losses, and the already tilted scale was quickly balanced. After a few more rounds, most of the Netherkill race experts were dead, and the eyes of the remaining ones were full of fear. They were not afraid of death, but in the face of such a terrifying existence, they could not suppress their fear at all. His soul was burning crazily. Soul Flame and Brutality were performed continuously. Powerful battle intuition and experience were the survival skills of the Netherkill clan warriors. Unfortunately, they could not withstand a single blow in front of absolute power. Very quickly, the third-dimensional passageway was cleared. The remaining Taichu cultivators were deeply shocked and looked at the corpses all over the ground and Lin Feng who had landed among the Nethersha experts. They felt extremely suffocated and could not calm down for a long time. He won. The battle in the dimensional passageway had ended just like that. It was too exaggerated, your Lin Feng? Ichin widened his eyes and looked at Lin Feng, whom he had not seen for a long time. What do you think? Lin Feng laughed involuntarily. Sweeping his gaze across the Taichu cultivators, he said, "Everyone, hurry up and leave this place. Fan Zhu and the others have already gone to reinforce the other dimensional passageways. If everyone has the strength to spare, you can head over. If your injuries are too severe, try to recover as much as possible." Fan Zhu. The Taichu cultivators instantly woke up. Seeing Lin Feng's serious expression, they did not delay and left the dimensional passageway, one by one. Pope, the assassin sword, and the candlelight guardian god were somewhat hesitant. However, seeing that Lin Feng did not take any action, they also left with the other cultivators. After a while, the third-dimensional passageway was empty. Dimensional passageway. Lin Feng touched the dimensional passageway's wall with one hand. Although the manifested willpower still had a considerable amount of offensive power, it was very scattered and was no longer as perfect as before. Lin Feng's Hongmeng dimensional body was already at the second stage, and the absorption speed was rather astonishing. In addition, the manifested willpower had lost its master and was like an object without an owner. Its energy was weakening extremely quickly. However, this was a dimensional passageway after all. The blade light and sword shadows had accumulated the energy of countless eras. Even if Lin Feng's absorption speed was fast, it would still take some time. Furthermore, the energy of the dimensional passageway would disappear as a whole, and the duration would be even longer. Let's change to a faster method. Lin Feng was very decisive and directly brought out the blue frost fairy dust lake. Starlight sparkled, and each of them contained a vigorous life force. The strongest Hongmeng source, Hongmeng Virile, was used. In an instant, the blue frost fairy dust lake turned into a giant beast and swallowed the energy of the dimensional passageway. Naturally, the blue frost fairy dust lake could not absorb the energy of the dimensional passageway. Instead, it directly destroyed it. With Hongmeng Virile as the source, it could destroy any other energy as long as it was strong enough. Pa! The third-dimensional passageway broke. Unlike the absorption of the manifested willpower, the destruction of the blue frost fairy dust lake was regional. Although it was only the tip of the iceberg of the third-dimensional passageway, it was actually enough. As long as the area of destruction was large enough, it would be like a rope bridge breaking. Even if the third-dimensional passageway still existed, the Underworld clan would not be able to pass through the dimensional space and enter. If the bridge broke, they would naturally not be able to pass through. That was because the dimensional space had many variables and dangers. Moreover, it was constantly changing. Lin Feng was one of a kind. The Underworld clan, including the 9 Hells Kings, had to be very careful in the dimensional space. It was not a joke to accidentally get lost in the dimensional space. The majestic Virile was enough to kill a lost 9 Hells King. As for the Hell Masters and Marshals who did not even have the ability to manifest willpower, they would lose their vision after entering the dimensional space, and it would be difficult for them to even find their way. Furthermore, the third-dimensional passageway was no longer reinforced and maintained by the sword shadows. When it broke in the middle, the dimensional passageway, which was no longer in its original shape, would naturally be fragmented and disassembled even faster. Oh! Lin Feng quickly discovered that something was wrong with the destruction of the third-dimensional passageway. Other than the power of the manifested willpower of the dimensional passageway itself, there was another force that existed in the dimensional space. Other cultivators could not sense the energy and changes in the dimensional space, but Lin Feng could. The dimensional space was just like his home. What powerful attainments in space! Lin Feng's figure flashed as he sped out of the third-dimensional passageway. To him, the dimensional energy of the dimensional space did not pose any pressure at all. In front of him, the dimensional energy of the dimensional space was attacking a square-shaped region. That region seemed to be locked down by some kind of energy. This was not the space of the Hongmeng Sea, but the space of the dimensional space. Although only a small part was locked, it was already extremely terrifying. At the very least, Lin Feng was far from being able to do it. Even if the dimensional space was his home ground, Virile would not be able to do it without attacking him. Who was the one who sealed this space? This level of attainment in space was truly shocking. The 9 Hells King of the Underworld clan. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. Although the space was sealed, he could vaguely sense the energy in this square area through his manifested willpower. It seemed to belong to the Underworld clan. Furthermore, this square area was coincidentally connected to the dimensional passageway. Boom! Without saying a word, Lin Feng pulled out his battle blade and directly attacked. It did not matter which Underworld clan expert it was. Although Lin Feng had consumed a lot of energy in the battle with the sword shadows, where was this place? The dimensional space. This was his home ground. Chapter 3253. Strange, there's something wrong with the dimensional channel. Can have been maintaining the dimensional channel in the dimensional space. Just resisting Virile's attacks was already a headache. After all, he was not the one who built the dimensional channel, and he did not have a special ability like Lin Feng. Although he had some doubts about the state of the dimensional channel, can still defended it. Suddenly, Can's expression changed slightly, and the distorted golden W on his forehead shone brightly. The isolated space around him shattered as if it was struck by lightning, and a sharp blade aura rushed over. Hua! Can's speed was extremely fast. If the 9 Hells King claimed to be second in speed, no one would dare to claim to be first. Even in the dimensional space, he was as fast as the wind. The sharp blade aura had consumed a lot of energy to break through space, so it was naturally easily dodged. It's him. Kan's eyes lit up. Previously in the Netherkill dimensional world, he had sensed an aura approaching, but when he chased after it, the other party had already disappeared. Although it was only a glimpse, can still remembered that aura. It was exactly the same as the blade aura now. It's him. Lin Feng also sensed Kan's existence at this moment. Just as he had expected, the Nine Hells King of the Netherkill clan was in the cubic space. Previously, when he had accidentally discovered the Netherkill dimensional world, they had met face to face, but they had never fought. At that time, there was still a gap between him and the strongest world lord, especially the strongest world lord of the Netherkill clan. But now, he could give it a try. That was because the dimensional space was his home ground. He used the heart-defying secret technique. In the dimensional space, the heart-defying secret technique was almost useless. Viral suppression was too strong, and his physical defense was already not bad. His attack power was greatly reduced. Taichu's source, Lin Feng's blade technique, was now close to the origin level. When it was used by Hongmeng Viral, it was completely unobstructed in the dimensional space and could release 100% of its power. Even the Hongmeng Viral in the Hongmeng Viral was guiding Viral's attacks from the surrounding Viral. What? How could he bear it? He quickly used a spatial teleportation to dodge the attack. His eyes were filled with shock. His opponent's attack power wasn't considered strong, and his blade techniques were ordinary. However, he was able to ignore Viral's attacks in the dimensional space, causing him to be extremely shocked. This was simply inconceivable. In the dimensional space, being able to block Viral's attacks was already pretty good. In order to unleash any of their attacks, they would first have to surpass Viral's level and possess sufficient explosive power. Only then would they have enough power to attack their opponents. Even for him, unless he was in the state of broken extremity, it would be very difficult for his attacks to be effective. However, the opponent before him was able to unleash 100% of his power with just a normal attack. If he was still hiding a trump card, it would be even more terrifying. Chua, without any hesitation, he moved through space like a bolt of lightning. Although his speed was not fast, it was extremely ghostly. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared without a trace. Lin Feng. How could one of the three kings of Nine Hells of the Infernal Killer clan flee without a fight? Last time, he was the one who ran away without a fight. Now it was his turn. Lin Feng was speechless for a moment. To be honest, he only wanted to test the strength of the strongest world lord of the Infernal Killer clan. He did not have any intention of winning. With his current strength, even if he had the absolute advantage in the dimensional space, he would not be able to win. His attack power was far from enough. However, his opponent did not give him a chance to spar at all and immediately ran away. It was not that San was timid. If he was constantly striving for self-improvement or invincible, he would have fought directly. However, San was relatively cautious and did not have much interest in unnecessary battles. Previously, he had helped Blade Light and Sword to guard the dimensional passageway and had used up a lot of his netherworld power in the dimensional space. After that, he encountered a freak like Lin Feng who could ignore Viral's attacks. Before he had accurate information, San did not want to take the risk. Moreover, he had sensed Lin Feng's aura outside the Infernal Killer dimensional world. His intuition told him that this was a very dangerous opponent. The Hongmeng Sea actually has such an expert. San floated in the dimensional space. His eyes flickered as his gaze fell on the third-dimensional passageway beside him. At this time, it was gradually collapsing like smoke and dust. San naturally knew what had happened. Blade Light and Sword Shadow was killed. The information about the love and hate separation was wrong. Whoosh! San entered the dimensional passageway. Although it was broken, the general energy and structure still remained. He turned into a stream of light and sped back to the Infernal Killer dimensional world. Whoosh! 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 Lin Feng searched the surroundings a few times. Seeing that there were no traces of San, he could only leave it as it was. He was not in a hurry to fight with him. Let's recover Hongmeng Viral first. Lin Feng knew that the current situation was urgent. Although Gu Huang was participating in the battle, The 9 Hells Kings of the first-dimensional passageways and fourth-dimensional passageways were the strongest world lords. Self-improvement. Invincible. Regardless of which one it was an absolute advantage against the experts of the Hongmeng Sea. Although Lin Feng admitted that he was not a match for them, it was a different matter in the dimensional passageway. The weight of Viral, the strongest world lord, had already reached 1,000. It was impossible for it to break through the limit. However, against the strongest world lord who had not broken through the limit, he might be able to put up a fight. Hua, the Hongmeng dimensional body, rapidly absorbed the energy. With Lin Feng's current life level and strength, his recovery speed could not be said to be slow. This was especially so when the other energy under Viral's control was obedient, allowing him to absorb twice the result with half the effort. Fighting against Blade Light and Sword Shadow was more about restraining and controlling. Lin Feng did not suffer any injuries. Very quickly, he had recovered to about 70 to 80%. The fourth-dimensional passageway relies more on the limitless Tai Chi array to resist. Furthermore, Viral's weight capacity is not high. With Senior Fanzu's participation, it should be able to slow things down. Even with me, it will not be of much help to the battle. The first-dimensional passageway is the most dangerous. Viral's weight capacity is over 1,000. Furthermore, there is no special array to resist it. If I were Gu Huang, I would go to the first-dimensional passageway to provide assistance. With Senior Gu Huang around, it doesn't matter if I'm there or not. Comparatively speaking, the second-dimensional passageway is the safest. However, Lin Feng already had a plan in his heart. There were two sides to everything. The safest option meant that he would be able to display his strength. The 9 Hells King of the second-dimensional passageway was the Bitter Spring Hell King. He was on the same level as Blade Light and Sword Shadow. If he could grasp the opportunity, he might be able to heavily injure or even kill him. However, this was not important. The most important thing was that he had the opportunity to destroy the dimensional passageway. The experts of the underworld world were inexhaustible. In terms of numbers, the experts of the Hongmeng Sea were at a disadvantage. Rather than fighting with them, it would be more direct to destroy the dimensional passageway. Without the dimensional passageway, even if they had the ability to reach the heavens, they would not be able to conquer the Hongmeng Sea. Now that the four-dimensional passageways were engaged in fierce battles, it was an opportunity for the underworld race. However, at the same time, it was also an opportunity for the Hongmeng Sea. Chapter 3254. The Grand Essence Origin Chaos Universe was in charge of the second-dimensional passage. It was led by the only world lord of Tai Su, the Master of Creation, and was locked in a fierce battle with the experts of the Netherkill clan of the Bitter Spring Prison. Although this dimensional passage was the second to be opened, the pressure wasn't that great. On one hand, the Grand Essence Origin Chaos Universe was indeed stronger than the Taichu Origin Chaos Universe, second only to the Grand Change Origin Chaos Universe. The Master of Creation's strength was second only to the Chaos Tao, Lord among the 5 World Lords, reaching the limit of a World Lord. On the other hand, the Bitter Spring Prison strength was inferior to the Cold Spring Prison, led by Blade Light and Sword Shadow. The Bitter Spring Prison King's combat power was on par with Blade Light and Sword Shadow. Without breaking the limit, he couldn't do anything to the Master of Creation. Outside the second-dimensional passage, there was no one to help defend it. If he used breaking the limit, the passage would almost certainly collapse, so he didn't dare to take the risk. Moreover, the four-dimensional passages didn't necessarily need to be captured. With the strongest prison king and invincible army attacking the first and fourth-dimensional passages, all he needed to do was to contain the enemy. Ding! Dang! The lifeblood weapon was a weapon that resembled a rake, but it had two sides. One side was densely packed with short, sharp teeth, and the other side was a long needle that was as sharp as a tooth, like a scorpion's venomous stinger. There were many ways to attack, and the way it attacked was also very different, with endless changes. The Soul Flame, Hurricane, made the attack of the Netherworld power more domineering. Any attack had characteristics similar to the Hurricane domain, strengthening control and attack. However, the Lord of Creation wasn't someone to be trifled with. He had comprehended 2 types of level 9 primordial laws, life and death, to the Great Circle. He had also comprehended 5 other types of level 9 primordial laws to the Great Circle. The Tao of Primordial had long since reached the sublimit. His goal was to comprehend all 7 types of level 9 primordial laws to the Great Circle and reach the Great Circle. The Tao of Meng was good at offense. The Tao of Hongmeng was good at defense. They had fought for more than 100 eras and knew each other well. Even if the Nethershi's attack was like a tide, the second-dimensional passage was still calm. The grand essence, origin, chaos universe, led by the Master of Creation, was still firmly guarding it. Although it was at a disadvantage, it was undoubtedly much better than the other 3-dimensional passages. Normally, it was difficult to break the balance, unless the special power appeared. The image of Tai Chi appeared on the white battle saber. Every attack seemed simple and casual, but it killed the infernal marshals and hell lords one by one. None of them were a match for it. Even a Netherkiller clan's Hell Master, who had used his soul flame, was beheaded in 2 to 3 moves. The Grand Essence experts were all dumbfounded. Who was this? Where did this monster come from? That was too awesome. Lin Feng, Taisu's desolate loon, recognized the newcomer at a glance. Previously, he had come into contact with Lin Feng in the 4th dimension. He had overestimated himself and challenged Lin Feng. In the end, he had suffered a crushing defeat. Even the number 1 Almighty in the Hongmeng Sea, Guangdu, had been defeated by Lin Feng. Lin Feng had left a deep impression on Grand Essence Desolate Ho. But was Lin Feng the person who killed the Nethersha clan like chickens? He knew that Lin Feng was very strong, but there should be a limit to how strong he was. It was impossible for him to be this strong. When did the Nethersha clan become so weak? If he had not been fighting with the Nethersha clan, it would have been hard to imagine that Lin Feng had killed the elites of the Combat clan. Even the strongest person in Grand Essence, the Master of Creation, could not do this. Damn monster! Are these the cultivators of the Hongmeng Sea? God! Everyone was dumbfounded. Seeing this blade-wielding human killing his way in and out, killing all the Nethersha clan's hell lords and marshals who were fighting against them, they were stunned and didn't know what to do. What was this? Kill stealing? But why were they so happy to be killed? The Master of Creation and Sweet, after hard times, also noticed Lin Feng. It was hard not to notice him in such a situation. As Taisu's desolate host shouted out Lin Feng's name in shock, everyone knew who he was. The new emperor of the Hongmeng Sea. The monster who had swept through the Yuan venerates investiture of the gods and reached the top of Mengji Tower. His reputation was no less than that of Emperor Guhuang of the past. Hi, you want to leave? The Master of Creation reacted quickly and stopped the Sweet after hard times, who intended to attack Lin Feng. It was rare for a great god to come to their door and help the Grand Essence Origin Chaotic Universe resolve the crisis, so he naturally tried his best to cooperate. Although the Master of Creation's strength was not bad, he knew that he did not have the ability to easily kill the Netherkiller clan's hell lords and marshals. Therefore, he admired Lin Feng. He has the strength of the strongest world lord. Although the Master of Creation had only glanced at Lin Feng, he already knew his strength. Roar! The Sweet after hard times looked fierce and angry. It wanted to break free from the Master of Creation's shackles and attack Lin Feng. The golden underworld power hurricane swept out and overlapped with the Master of Creation's huge life force, but it could not break through. Deathbind. The Master of Creation used his trump card. The sovereign primordial origin item, Star Prison Chain, was unleashed from his hand. It transformed into streaks of flowing light that sealed off all paths of escape. If one's attainments in the Tao of Space were as strong as he was, they would be able to break through it easily. However, like most Netherkiller experts, he was skilled in close combat. Boom, boom, boom. His soul flames swept out, and the sweet came after the bitter. At this point, he could no longer suppress his crazy battle intent. The extreme breaking imprint between his eyebrows was faintly on the verge of cracking. Every time he was locked down by the star prison chain of the Master of Creation, the bitter and sweet coming after the bitter was a heart-wrenching frustration. He wanted to fight, but he could not fight to his heart's content. He was extremely irritable and annoyed. He wanted to break free from all the shackles. He's about to use the extreme break. Everyone back off. Lin Feng slowed down as he slaughtered the experts of the Nether Killer clan. Extreme breaking? It was indeed very powerful. Once extreme breaking was over, he would have an absolute advantage in the second dimension channel. However, it was different now. Lin Feng was not afraid of the power of extreme breaking. Instead, the side effects of using extreme breaking would all appear. This was what Lin Feng wanted to see the most. However, the Grand Plane's cultivators were different from him. They could not survive in the dimensional space. Once the dimensional channel broke, it would be a fatal blow. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The Grand Plane's cultivators all retreated. They obeyed Lin Feng's orders unconditionally. In Hongmeng, the strong were respected. Even Huang Ho, who was unhappy with Lin Feng, followed his orders. Lin Feng continued to kill the Nether Killer clan experts. The Master of Creation continued to pester Lin Feng, wearing down his patience. Little by little, his remaining willpower was disintegrated. His eyes turned blood red, revealing his madness. Pong! In an instant, golden light erupted, wrapping around the sweet moment. The extreme breaking imprint between his eyebrows twisted ferociously, revealing a vigorous energy. The terrifying power almost instantly broke through the Master of Good Fortune's astral chains like a wild beast breaking free from its chains. He finally regained his freedom. Chapter 32:55. Rumble. At the instant when the extreme break was unleashed, the dimensional passageway started to vibrate violently. This was different from the precise control of the blade glints and sword shadows. The extreme break state was slightly different. Furthermore, the extreme break he unleashed was not completely out of his own will. He had been forced into a corner. Even a corner dog would jump over a wall. Furthermore, Lu Cheng had tyrannical strength, but he was restricted by Viral's weight. Leave this to me. Lin Feng's voice landed in the Master of Creation's ears. The latter was slightly stunned, then responded softly. His massive life force formed a dense stream of light. He stepped lightly on the star prison chain and quickly leaped to the back of the dimensional channel. Although the Master of Creation had not seen Lin Feng's full strength, just seeing a part of it was enough. He inexplicably trusted Lin Feng. This human had an indescribable charm and confidence. Leaving it to him was no problem. The Master of Creation indeed did not know much about Lin Feng. If he knew that even Blade Light and Sword Shadow had died at Lin Feng's hands, he probably would not have hesitated at all. That saves me a lot of effort. The battle saber, Snow, Jewel shone brightly. Lin Feng directly faced off against the sweet after bitterness. In fact, even if he didn't use the breaking extremity technique now, he would have done so later. Unless he could escape from Lin Feng's dual domain control. In the face of life and death, no matter how unwilling he was, he had to use breaking extremity, even if it meant destroying the dimensional channel. He was not Lin Feng's opponent at all in the state where he had yet to break through. The blue frost fairy dust lake had already spread out. As the strongest Hongmeng source item, its power was enormous. Lin Feng had not fully mastered it, and under normal circumstances, it would take some time to use it. However, when a Master of Creation was entangled with Snow Jewel, Lin Feng had already used it. The blue starlight had already enveloped the entire area. However, the blue frost fairy dust lake did not attack Snow Jewel. Its power exploded directly at the dimensional channel that was gradually collapsing, making things worse. Originally, he had been able to maintain the dimensional passageway after suffering for so long. However, at this moment, he was unable to control his own strength, and the weight of the viral had completely exceeded its capacity. At the instant when Lin Feng's blue frost immortal dust lake erupted, the dimensional passageway had been blasted apart. It was incomparably similar to the third-dimensional passageway from before. Lin Feng followed the same pattern, and his technique was extremely skillful. Although he could control the blue frost immortal dust lake with his domain, destroying the dimensional passageway was more important. What? Viral appeared to have instantly squeezed out, causing Wang Zhong's extreme break state to quiver. His consciousness, which had been burning with rage, sobered up by quite a bit. It wasn't that he hadn't trained in dimensional spaces before, and he knew how dangerous dimensional spaces were. Behind him was the dimensional passageway that had just been broken. After suffering for so long, he quickly leapt backwards, intending to return to the dimensional passageway. However, a white saber suddenly appeared in front of his eyes, and a shocking power suddenly erupted. It ignored viral suppression and was caught off guard. He was knocked back with a groan, and his golden netherworld energy was greatly damaged by the double attack. What a powerful attack! After suffering for so long, although he was injured, his fighting spirit was still high. Just as he stepped back into the dimensional passageway, the terrifying saber light appeared again at an unimaginable speed. Damn it, does viral space not obstruct him? After suffering for so long, Wang Zhong continued to resist, and his injuries worsened. In just an instant, the blue frost celestial dust lake exploded once again. The place where he had stepped on with much difficulty was destroyed once again. To the dimensional passageway, 2 consecutive explosions at close locations not only caused the damage to be superimposed, but also caused a chain reaction of damage. Rumble, the dimensional passageway behind him shattered one after another. After suffering for so long, Wang Zhong's pressure increased sharply. Previously, half of his battle was in the dimensional space, but now, almost 90% of his battle was in the dimensional space. This was completely different from the battle in the dimensional passageway. It wasn't easy for Wang Zhong, the strongest world lord, to say nothing of the good times after suffering for so long. He was just an ordinary king of 9 hells. Even if he burned his soul and broke through, increasing his strength in all aspects, he was still a world lord. Furthermore, even in the dimensional passageway, in the Hongmeng Sea, he might not be Lin Feng's opponent in the state of breaking through. Saber Light and Sword Shadows had been killed by Lin Feng. After suffering for so long, was there an exception? Swish, swish, swish. Lin Feng's speed was extremely fast, and he attacked Wang Zhong in circles. One of them was walking on flat ground, while the other had to contend with viral at all times. Regardless of whether it was in terms of strength or speed, the difference was like heaven and earth. Lin Feng didn't even need to expend much energy. He only needed to restrain Wang Zhong and let him burn his soul to slowly exhaust his strength. Then, killing Wang Zhong would be a piece of cake. Viral would naturally do it for him. No matter how strong a cultivator was, they would be crushed by viral after their strength was exhausted. After suffering for so long, how small was he in the dimensional space? No, even his last voice was drowned out by the dimensional space. He had tyrannical strength, but he couldn't use it at all. Regardless of whether it was his attack or defense, they were all nibbled away by viral. His death was inevitable. The second one, compared to the trouble of killing Saber Light and Sword Shadow, killing Wang Zhong was undoubtedly much easier. Lin Feng absorbed the energy on the spot and recovered his strength. After killing the first king of 9 hells, he was still happy and excited, but after killing the second one, he was as calm as water. When one's strength was strong enough, even if it was a battle clan, there was no difference. The target mission was successfully completed. Not only did he destroy the second dimensional passageway, but he also killed Wang Zhong. There were only 7 kings of 9 hells left. There's no need to fight them head-on. I just need to destroy the dimensional passageway, but Lin Feng muttered to himself. The second and third dimensional passageways were relatively easy to destroy because they were built by world lords. However, the first and fourth dimensional passageways were built by the strongest world lords. It was very difficult. In particular, his strength was not as good as unstoppable improvement and invincible. My advantage is in the dimensional space. As long as I fight in the dimensional space, I can attack and defend, and I will be invincible. Lin Feng thought quickly as he recovered his energy. Moreover, the energy capacity of the two-dimensional passageways is limited. Even the strongest world lord can't break the limit. Compared to unstoppable improvement, I'm more familiar with invincible. The fourth-dimensional passageway, virile, has a smaller capacity and is more suitable for destruction. As long as I can destroy the fourth-dimensional passageway, there will only be one-dimensional passageway left, and the crisis of the Netherkill clan will be resolved. Lin Feng quickly recovered his strength. It didn't take too much effort to kill the beast. The Netherkill clan's all-out attack had indeed caught the Hongmeng Sea off guard. However, in retrospect, this battle was also an important juncture between the two-dimensional worlds. The loser might not necessarily be the Hongmeng Sea. Heroes were born in times of crisis. Back then, Taishi's calamity had appeared. Today, the Netherkill clan's chaos. Lin Feng had risen. Chapter 3256. By now, the Netherkiller clan was already at a disadvantage. Originally, they were completely suppressed, and the Blade Light and Sword Shadow had successfully taken down the dimensional channel. Now, not only was he dead, but the second and third channels were also destroyed by Lin Feng. The Netherkiller clan was in a miserable state. However, the Netherkiller clan still had a chance. As long as they could take down either the first or fourth dimensional channel, the Netherkiller clan would be able to win the battle if either of them entered the Hongmeng Sea. Once any of the three strongest kings of Nine Hells entered the Hongmeng Sea, they would be able to use breaking extremity without restraint. The Hongmeng Sea would be finished. Neither Lin Feng nor Gu Huang was their match. However, the Netherkiller clan did not seem to have a real chance. Within the first-dimensional channel, Gu Huang faced murderous, seething, killing intent after using break, completely suppressing him. When the strongest world lord fought against another world lord, even if murderous, seething, killing intent used break, even if he was from the combat race, he still wasn't Gu Huang's opponent. Emperor Gu Huang was a supreme existence who had single-handedly quelled the calamity of Taishi. However, Gu Huang was unable to kill Lin Feng. On one hand, he did not have Lin Feng's attainments in the Tao of Dreams and was inferior to Lin Feng in terms of killing power. On the other hand, this was the first-dimensional passageway, the home ground of the Netherkill race. Behind murderous Qi, the Netherkiller clan, who had yet to appear, gave the cultivators of the Hongmeng Sea a lot of pressure. However, after Gu Huang joined the battle, the first-dimensional channel was no longer at a disadvantage. Instead, they were evenly matched with the Netherkiller clan. Even the Chaos Dowlord and Thousand Blood Empress had joined the battle, giving the Netherkiller clan a lot of pressure. The ones who were at a disadvantage were the third and fourth dimensional channels. However, the crisis of the third-dimensional channel had been completely resolved by Lin Feng. Fan Zhu went to the first-dimensional channel to help, while Lone Sword went to the fourth-dimensional channel to provide support. The three world lords of Taishi's chaotic universe had all gathered in the fourth-dimensional channel. However, the crisis of the fourth-dimensional channel had not been resolved, because this time, Invincible of the Masses was serious. With one in the lead, he was invincible. Even with the addition of the three world lords, Dao Ji would only be able to provide 30% more energy. The Boundless Tai Chi formation was ultimately still the Boundless Tai Chi formation. Dao Ji was still the one controlling it. Moreover, even if it was a real battle, would the four world lords be able to defeat Invincible? What a joke. Even under the state of broken extremity, he could easily defeat the joint forces of four world lords, let alone being invincible. In terms of individual combat ability, close combat, and actual combat, even the strongest Nine Hells King, Hisho, would have to be wary of him. Boom, boom, boom. Every single attack from Invincible 10,000 caused the dimensional passageway to tremble. Not only did he not suffer from any side effects after activating his soul ignition, his attacks had become even more ferocious and thunderous. It was truly overbearing to the extreme. Every punch seemed to be able to destroy the universe. Every single attack caused the experts of the primordial ocean to be deeply shocked. The boundless Tai Chi formation was very powerful. With the addition of the three world lords, Viral was able to withstand invincible 10,000 attacks. Unfortunately, Dao Wuji was not Gu Huang or Lin Feng. With his strength, he could only barely hold on. The boundless Tai Chi formation was torn apart. Dao Wuji's Tai Chi formation was activated. While resisting invincible 10,000, it repaired the boundless Tai Chi formation. Very quickly, there was another explosion and the infinite Tai Chi array was torn apart. Dao Wuji did the same thing and could only barely defend. As the core of the formation, Dao Wuji was like a tight rubber band. It was difficult for him to relax. The boundless Tai Chi formation was like an armor. It was destroyed and repaired. Not only was the defense of the armor getting weaker and weaker, the cultivator wearing the armor was also getting weaker and weaker. There were flaws and dangers everywhere. Puff! Dao Wuji, who was defending, was pushed back by invincible 10,000's punch. Even though he had gathered the strength of all the powerhouses, he was still Dao Wuji. Every battle had caused him great pressure and damage. Crack! Crack! The boundless Tai Chi formation gradually cracked. It couldn't take the burden anymore. After being destroyed continuously, even if it recovered, it would still be damaged. Moreover, the damage was too great. It was like a broken porcelain. As Dao Wuji, who was at the core of the formation, was severely injured, the defense of the boundless Tai Chi formation finally collapsed. The cultivators of the Tai Chi origin chaotic universe were stunned. Without the protection of the boundless Tai Chi formation, it was a disaster for them. Who could stop invincible 10,000? Plus, the cultivators of the Tai Chi origin chaotic universe were protected by the boundless Tai Chi formation all year round. They lacked experience fighting against the Nether Killer race. Especially now that they were using up so much energy, it was extremely disadvantageous. Form the formation. A petite red figure jumped lightly. It was Qi Yin, one of the three royal guards of Taishu. Her red robe was like a dream, and the staff in her hand flashed with white light. Stars fell. The other two royal guards, Green Bull and Dujian, separated to the left and right. Two different types of power condensed and formed a light ball in front of them. Instantly, they formed a line with Qi Yin, forming a triangle with three different colors. There were all kinds of secret runes on it. It was like a giant dragon with its head held high. Instantly, it charged towards invincible 10,000. The strongest Hong Meng source item, tricolor sky dragon formation. This was the strongest Grand Mist origin item, formed from three sovereign primordial origin items. It was a rare set of sovereign primordial origin items. Originally, Gu Huang had owned it, and he had passed it to Qi Yin, and Long Chun. When they used it to form a formation, they could unleash the power of the tricolor heavenly dragon formation. Then, the first giant dragon appeared. The second giant dragon extended its sharp claws, and the third giant dragon swept its tail. The three attacks gathered the power of the three royal guards and connected with the broken boundless Tai Chi formation to save the severely injured Dao Wuji. Pung, pung, dong. The gloves on Invincible's hands extended to his arms, and golden underworld energy gathered, easily blocking the three attacks. His domineering eyes flashed, and with a roar, he instantly punched back, causing the three huge dragons to tremble in body and soul. The attack was simple and clean, but it showed his ultimate strength. This was his basic strength, the confidence of the three strongest kings of nine hells. Invincible 10,000 stepped forward. His face was expressionless like a King Kong. His soul was burning with brutality. A huge power gathered in his fists like a comet tail and struck down. Zheng. The tricolor sky dragon formation's defense condensed at the center. The three colors gathered, and the dragon scales were tough. Qi Yin, Green Bull, and Dujian used all their strength to resist. The Tai Chi practitioners stared with their eyes wide open. Rumble. It was a devastating blow. There was no suspense. Invincible 10,000 was like a god descending to earth. A pair of domineering iron fists shattered the tricolor sky dragon formation's defense. Qi Yin and the other two had ugly expressions. They were forced back with one attack. Too strong. Chapter 32:57. Invincible was very strong. His control over his power had reached the pinnacle. His dimensional energy capacity wasn't high and was far from a normal 1,000 dimensional energy capacity. However, the instantaneous eruption was extremely terrifying. Apart from him, only a handful of 9 Hell's Kings could achieve this kind of extreme control over their strength. Crack! Even though Invincible's control was very weak, the dimensional channel still shattered a little. However, under the control of Invincible's will, it was slowly repaired. The tricolor sky dragon array wasn't weak. When combined, it was comparable to the strongest Hongmeng's source item. However, no matter how strong the treasure was, it depended on who was using it. There was a huge difference between a World Lord and the strongest World Lord. World Lords were unable to unleash 100% of the strongest primordial artifact's power. Furthermore, their opponent was invincible, a life-bound weapon that had been tempered thousands of times. It was a grade higher than the strongest primordial artifact. This was because Invincible was the strongest World Lord. After breaking the tricolor sky dragon array with one strike, the second strike had already destroyed it. The 3 giant dragons flew away like swallows. Qi Yin, Green Cow, and Lone Sword were also tough. Even though their combined attack was broken, they didn't retreat. Even though they had nothing to do with this battle, the 3 of them planned to fight to the end. The 3 World Lords that were trained by Gu Huang all had a very strong fighting spirit and will. It was just a pity that the one they faced was invincible. His close combat ability was the best among the underworld killers. His pair of iron fists were unrivaled. No matter how the 3 primordial origin creatures, the primordial origin creatures and the primordial origin creatures attacked like a tide, they could not do anything to him. Boom, boom, boom. 1 against 3, it was a complete suppression. Pong. A Tai Chi diagram appeared in midair, blocking Unrivaled's thunderous strike. Dao Wu Ji was severely injured, but even Qi Yin and the other 2 were giving it their all. As the strongest being in the Tai Chi Origin chaotic universe, he had no reason to retreat. He would rather die in battle than surrender. Too weak. Invincible could even break the boundless Tai Chi formation. Why would he be afraid of Dao Wu Ji's attack? It wasn't even 1% of the boundless Tai Chi formation's power. A pair of iron fists wrapped in life-bound weapons had astonishing explosive power that destroyed everything. The realm was so high that it far surpassed the legendary Hongmeng's secret arts. No, it was beyond the origin level. Bang, bang, pong. The 4 World Lords were all pushed back, and the entire dimensional passageway was on the verge of collapse. However, it did not collapse under the forceful support of Invincible Army. This was a gamble. They were betting on whether the dimensional passageway would collapse first, or whether the experts of the Hongmeng Sea would be defeated first. Now, the results were out. Let's go together. Invincible Wan Fu's indifferent gaze swept across the experts of Tai Chi. He took a step forward confidently, and he was not even interested in punching the World Lord who was lying on the ground. Domineering. He was the true overlord. In his eyes, there was no opponent, only a single defeat. Until now, he was invincible and had only lost 1 battle. This was the reason why he went to the Hongmeng Sea. He wasn't here to conquer the Hongmeng Sea, nor was he here to find an opponent. He was only here for a bet. If you agree to a bet, you must accept your loss. Chi, chi, chi. Rays of light shot towards Invincible Army. Even though there was a huge difference in power, the Universe Lords still tried their best to follow Dao Wu Ji's footsteps. They didn't care even if they died, as they had nowhere else to go. Invincible Army clenched his fists. His expression was cold as he ignored the incoming attacks. His underworld energy burned, and a golden light protected his body. Weak race. Every punch of Invincible Army was like splitting the heavens and earth. These Universe Lords were not even comparable to the Mingsham Marshals. To him, they were not just weak, they were extremely weak. He didn't need to expend any effort to kill them all. However, Invincible Army didn't care about bullying the weak. At this moment, Hua, a blue light flashed past, and at the place where Invincible Man and the World Masters were fighting just now, a blue lake instantly appeared. Specks of starlight could be seen as the lake expanded rapidly, and energy gushed out like a tide. Huh. Invincible Army frowned and stopped. Pong. The golden light flashed and blocked the attacks of the Universe Lords. Invincible Army's thick neck turned back, and his dark eyes looked at the blue lake with interest. Chi. Pong. The manifested willpower collapsed, and many dimensional passageways exploded. However, this time, the dimensional passageway did not explode. Instead, its energy became even thinner. Above the blue frost immortal dust lake, Lin Feng's figure flashed. His battle blade, Snow Jewel, lit up, and primordial dimensional power rapidly surged out. Boom! Lin Feng attacked the dimensional passageway's barrier. His goal was very clear, which was to destroy the fourth dimensional passageway. The energy of the attack was shocking, and it caused double damage to the blue frost fairy dust lake. Finally, the fourth dimensional passageway showed signs of shattering. The dimensional passageway's resistance was extremely strong. This was the difference between having the protection of a constructor and not. Let's fight! Invincible Army's thunderous voice resounded. His soul burned even more fiercely, and he went straight for Lin Feng's blue frost fairy dust lake. He naturally wouldn't give Lin Feng another chance to attack the dimensional passageway. After all, it was formed by the manifested willpower and wasn't a defense. After being attacked continuously, even if he was protecting it, it was in danger of collapsing. Furthermore, Invincible Army also discovered that the little guy who destroyed the dimensional passageway was quite strong. Indeed, it's not enough. Lin Feng wanted to attack the dimensional passageway again, but it was too late. However, he didn't have much hope. With Invincible Army guarding the dimensional passageway, it was too difficult to destroy it. If Invincible Army didn't care about him and continued to charge forward, Lin Feng was confident that he could destroy the dimensional passageway. However, Invincible Army didn't do that. Since he couldn't take any shortcuts, he could only fight. He had to force Invincible Army to use all of his strength. With Invincible Army's strength, the fourth dimensional passageway definitely wouldn't be able to withstand it and would collapse. Although Lin Feng knew that he couldn't defeat Invincible Army, it wasn't difficult for him to escape from Invincible Army's pursuit in the dimensional space. Lin Feng? It's really Lin Feng. It can't be right. The Tai Chi experts naturally recognized Lin Feng. After all, Lin Feng had helped them in the fourth dimensional passageway for so long. However, this Lin Feng was too different from the Lin Feng they knew. He had forcefully destroyed the dimensional passageway and fought with Invincible Army without being at a disadvantage. He was the strongest world master, Invincible Army. 4 world masters working together were all defeated by him. How was it possible for Lin Feng to be on par with him? He was too strong. All the Universe Masters were dumbfounded, but the 4 Universe Masters weren't that surprised. The 3 Royal Guard from Taisher had already heard about how strong Lin Feng was from Guhuang. Du Jian had even witnessed Lin Feng killing Blade Light, sword in the state of breaking with his own eyes. Of course, Lin Feng could contend with Invincible Army. Chapter 32:58. Awesome. Again, the more Invincible Wan Fu fought, the more excited he got. Compared to attacking the dimensional passageway, he preferred fighting, especially when fighting against opponents of similar strength. The fourth dimensional passageway Viral's capacity was insufficient, so Invincible Wan Fu had been controlling his strength. Not only did he not use Extreme Break, he did not even use Soul Flame or Brutality. It was only during this general attack that they were able to display their brutality. He suddenly realized that not everyone in the Hongmeng Sea was weak. Lin Feng's appearance made him overjoyed. A cultivator who could fight him to a standstill in his brutality state. No, Lin Feng was even stronger than his brutality state. Chi. Lin Feng's blade slashed through Invincible Wan Fu's defense, causing blood to flow out. However, the latter did not seem to be in pain. His thick head tilted as he licked the blood on his body. Invincible Wan Fu's aura surged once again. Rumble, the fourth-dimensional passageway, trembled violently. The dimensional passageway, which was already in a precarious situation, was now in even greater danger. Although Invincible Wan Fu had tried his best to control the passageway, if his strength continued to erupt, the passageway would definitely collapse. Soul Flame Firmament. Invincible Wan Fu did not care as the power of his soul flame burst out. His soul flame was extremely rare in the Netherkill race, and it was ranked in the top 5 in terms of overall strength. The might of the firmament was vast and majestic, and it enveloped Invincible Wan Fu's body. Boom, boom, boom. Every punch carried the might of the firmament, and it was invincible. If Invincible Wan Fu's brutality state was like a meat grinder, then Invincible Wan Fu's current state was like a cannon. Wherever his fist went, it was unstoppable. Lin Feng did not use Soul Shock. It would be foolish to use Soul Shock against Invincible Wan Fu, even if the origin was a source-grade secret technique. Not only would it not be able to suppress the enemy, but it would also hurt his own soul. So strong. Lin Feng's fighting spirit was also surging. Snow Jade had already entered its strongest state, and its weapon spirit had appeared. Its strength was at the 4th stage, but it was a pity that Snow Jade was only a Homing's origin item. The grade was 1 grade lower. Invincible's weapon was a natal weapon. It was nurtured with the power of the strongest world lord, and its might surpassed that of the strongest Hongming origin item at its peak. It completely suppressed Lin Feng's battle blade, Snow Jade. The domineering and peerless fist revealed its simplicity and foundation. It was a very ordinary fist technique, but every punch hit the flesh. It was solid and solid, returning to its original state. Invincible was very good at making use of his own advantages and strength. Even though Lin Feng had used the heart-defying secret art, and Homing's dimensional body wasn't inferior to Invincible in all aspects, he was completely inferior in terms of control over his strength and realm. Your tyrannical intent is too crude. Unrivaled 10,000 men broke Lin Feng's battle blade, Snow Jade, with a single punch. Lin Feng's strongest blade technique was based on Invincible's fist technique concept. However, he was no match for Invincible at this moment. Lin Feng relied on Viral's uniqueness and Homing's Viral's tyrannical strength to suppress Invincible's underworld energy, but it was difficult to make up for the difference in combat techniques and realm. The 3 strongest kings of 9 hells are indeed worthy of their reputation. Lin Feng admired them from the bottom of his heart. Previously, he had killed Saber Light and Sword Shadow consecutively, and the sweetness after suffering had raised his confidence and fighting spirit to the peak. He had even become a little arrogant. However, the battle with Invincible was like a bucket of cold water that had been poured over him, and it made Lin Feng completely sober. He was still very far from being a true, top-notch expert. This was only Invincible under the suppression of his strength, and he hadn't even used Break Extremity. If he used his full strength, how terrifying would that be? Lin Feng was also belittling himself. In the eyes of Taiji's cultivators, he was already tyrannical enough. He had challenged Invincible alone. He had forced Invincible to use his soul flame, but he still couldn't take down Lin Feng. How powerful was that? Just now, Invincible had broken the infinite Taiji formation with his own strength and defeated 4 world lords consecutively. He was invincible in the dimensional passage, and no one could stop him. Among the kings of 9 hells, the Netherkiller clan was the best in close combat. Willpower, combat techniques, and so on were among the best in the Netherkiller clan. His soul flame was also one of the top 5 in the Netherkiller clan. In the Netherkiller clan, he had experienced countless battles in the dimensional world and had only tasted defeat once in his life. It was already very impressive that Lin Feng could fight to a draw with Invincible in his soul flame state and was only at a slight disadvantage. The dimensional passageway gradually shattered, unable to withstand a battle of this level. Be it Lin Feng or Invincible, both of them were in high spirits. At this moment, Invincible had no intention of leaving the dimensional passageway. In his eyes, there was only battle. Again, raise your domineering aura. Your weapon is too weak. It didn't look like a battle of life and death at all. Instead, it looked like a battle of guidance. Invincible completely suppressed Lin Feng. Even if Lin Feng used the blue frost fairy dust lake and the 100 million wheels 8 front formation to control him, he couldn't do anything to Invincible. He was like an invincible god of war, brutally killing his way into the formation, and no one could get close. Bang! The dimensional passageway trembled violently. The first to collapse wasn't Lin Feng, but the dimensional passageway itself. Unlike the second and third dimensional passageways destroyed by Lin Feng, the destruction of the fourth dimensional passageway was omnidirectional. Viral's capacity wasn't high to begin with, and now it was even worse. It shattered again and again, and no matter how strong Invincible was, he couldn't keep it together. The experts of Taiji had long retreated under Dao Wuji's lead, including the 3 world lords of Taishu. Their strength wasn't at the level where they could survive in the dimensional space. As for Lin Feng, he had hoped for the dimensional passage to collapse. This was also one of his goals. It was completed perfectly. 3 out of the 4 dimensional passages were broken, and the crisis of the Netherkill clan was almost perfectly resolved. What's more, fighting in the dimensional space gave Lin Feng a greater advantage than fighting in the dimensional passageway. However, this was only relative. In the dimensional space, he would be invincible against 10,000 enemies and would be able to unleash his breaking limit. Invincible in the soul flame state was already so tyrannical. How terrifying would it be in the breaking extremity state? Buzz, buzz, buzz. The breaking extremity mark between his eyebrows emitted a golden light. The power of Invincible surged like a tide, and an extremely domineering aura covered the dimensional space. It seemed that even Viral retreated 3 feet. Extremely terrifying. He was finally going to explode. Whoosh! Lin Feng retreated instead of advancing. Just as Invincible's breaking extremity was about to explode, he retreated rapidly like a shooting star. Viral posed no obstacle to Lin Feng. His speed was so fast that even How to Endure couldn't catch up, let alone Invincible. The mission was completed. What was the point of staying here? Lin Feng wasn't stupid. Clashing head-on with such an invincible opponent would be courting death. This brat. Invincible's body flashed with a golden light, and he clenched his fists like a war god. He looked in the direction Lin Feng left, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Chapter 32:59. Hongming's Twin Towers area, outside the third dimension passage. The corpse of Blade Light and Sword Shadow was in tatters, having been shattered by Viral's attack. His blood had dried up, and his lifeless eyes and aura were gone. He was deader than dead, and even his life weapon was completely shattered. Death in battle was the best ending for the Netherkill clan experts. There's actually a cultivator in the Hongmeng Sea who can kill Blade Light and Sword Shadow in the broken state. Is it Emperor Lonely Glory? A fiery red figure stood beside the corpse of Blade Light and Sword Shadow. Her almond-shaped eyes were like fire. It was Marshal Wally Hongmeng of the Taichu Origin Chaos universe. She had always suspected Lin Feng, but there was no evidence. Her aura was also not of the insect clan. What is she doing here? Another dimensional passage has been shattered. Marshal Wally Hongmeng's beautiful eyes flashed, and she frowned slightly. 3 out of 4 dimensional passages have been shattered. Not only did our clan fail to capture the Hongmeng Sea in one fell swoop, but we also suffered huge losses. As expected, the Taichu Origin Chaos universe has to be on guard. Marshal Wally Hongmeng closed her eyes, and her slender eyelashes fell. She seemed to be preparing for something. I understand. Marshal Wally Hongmeng seemed to be talking to herself. She gently opened her eyes, and a strange light flashed in her eyes. This is the only way. I didn't expect our clan to be forced to this step. Fortunately, there's still Blade Light and Sword Shadow. Marshal He Li and Hongmeng suddenly shouted. A fiery red aura enveloped them. In an instant, they felt their souls burning. It was like a ball of raging flames. yet it had a considerable amount of spiritual energy, as if it had its own independent consciousness. This power had been hidden in Marshal Wali Homing's body. It was not that Lin Feng could not discover it. If it was the current Lin Feng, he would definitely be able to detect the secret in Marshal Wali Homing's soul. However, the previous Lin Feng did not have this ability. Soul Flame, Rebirth. It was a very special soul flame. In terms of power, it was not ranked in the Netherkill clan, but it was quite special. It could completely transform the will of the Netherkill clan into soul flames and be reborn into the body of any expert. Of course, the host had to be able to withstand the soul flame first. Secondly, the host had to be weak enough to not be able to resist. He was the only one from the Netherkiller clan who had such a soul flame. Hell Overlord Netherspring, Love and Hate. Hua. The red radiance was like a fiery star. It fell into the blade light and Sword Shadow's body and emitted a scorching radiance. The enormous soul flame energy seemed to have been suppressed for a long time. It finally broke free and started to burn crazily. Whoosh, whoosh. The saber light and Sword Shadow's originally dim eyes gradually lit up. The shattered corpse recovered bit by bit under the gathering of nether power, and a new body grew out. Even the life weapon gradually regained its vitality. Rebirth. It was a special and terrifying ability. Pa. The powerful aura of the Netherkill clan gradually recovered. Blade Light and Sword Shadow were the real kings of the Nine Hells, and so was Love and Hate Bieli. Although they were not from the same era, Love and Hate Bieli was still very powerful. In Marshal Wali Homing's body, he could not display his full strength. But in the body of the Blade Light and Sword Shadow, Love and Hate Bieli could display his full strength. She also used a sword. Stinky Man's body. The reborn Blade Light and Sword Shadow's expression was ugly. He was extremely unhappy. If she had a choice, she would not have chosen the body of the Blade Light and Sword Shadow. It was not strong, it was a man. But now, this was the only way for her to recover her strength. Also, the life weapon of the Netherkiller clan needed a long time to nurture. Blade Light and Sword Shadow used a sword, and Love and Hate Bieli could use it, saving a lot of energy. Not bad, I can use it. The Blade Light and Sword Shadow waved the sword in his hand, and the twisted W mark between his eyebrows shone again. As a king of the Nine Hells, Love and Hate Bieli could use Breaking Extremity. However, the Blade Light and Sword Shadow now was not the real Blade Light and Sword Shadow. Strictly speaking, he was Love and Hate Bieli. The real Blade Light and Sword Shadow had fallen. First Dimension Passage. The Breaking Extremity mark gradually shone. Love and Hate Bieli, who had just recovered her strength, felt the power of Breaking Extremity that she had not used for a long time, and was already warming up. After being dormant for a long time, she finally erupted. This time, she would either succeed or die. The First Dimension Passage was in full swing. With Gu Huang as the leader, the battle between the Viral clan and the Netherkiller clan could be said to be tragic. Here, the Netherkiller clan could bear the most weight, and the Netherkiller clan also had the most experts. With a self-strengthening, unceasing effort to defend the Dimensional Passage, the Netherkiller clan was launching their final attack. This was the command of the self-strengthening, unceasing effort. The lords of the 5 great worlds of the Hongming Sea could exchange information, and so could the Netherkiller clan's 9 Hells King. The self-strengthening, unceasing effort, who was known as the #1 commander of the Netherkiller clan, was the planner and main attacker of this general attack. If not for Lin Feng's sudden appearance, the Netherkiller clan would have won. If not for Gu Huang, the First Dimension Passage would have been conquered. But there were no ifs. Since it had happened, they had to bear the corresponding consequences. The self-strengthening, unceasing effort never knew how to write the word regret. Although 3-dimensional passages had been destroyed, the Netherkiller clan was far from being in a desperate situation, and he still had trump cards that he had not used. As long as any dimensional passage was conquered, the Netherkiller clan would be able to turn the tables and win this battle. Pong! The entrance of the first dimension passage was forcefully opened, and the great being from the Great Change origin chaotic universe who was guarding the back was instantly killed. Even a universe ruler could not stop the intruder. Golden light surrounded the intruder, and nether energy was boundless. The extreme breaking mark between the intruder's eyebrows was exceptionally clear. Love and hate separation. In a battle between two armies, the most frightening thing was not how strong the enemy was, but the presence of a spy within the army. Naturally, there were no spies in the Hongmeng Sea. Love and hate separation had been among them for a long time. To be precise, she was a spy, and a very powerful one at that. Chi. The same sword in the hands of different great beings from the Netherkiller clan was different. The sword moves of the Blade Light and Sword Shadow could be used freely and valiantly. Love and hate separations, sword moves were more feminine and agile. Like the shadow of a butterfly and the trembling of a flower, she danced gracefully. Sword light flashed, and universe rulers fell from time to time. To the Nine Hells King, universe rulers were too weak. Although the Netherkiller clan could not tolerate bullying the weak in the Netherkiller dimension world, this was a critical moment. The Netherkiller clan had reached the critical moment of absolute victory in the battle between the two great dimensional worlds. Naturally, they would not care so much. They would kill those who needed to be killed. Blade Light and Sword Shadow. Fanzu was a little stunned. He had seen the Blade Light and Sword Shadow being killed by Lin Feng with his own eyes. However, wasn't the Netherkiller clan's Nine Hells King who appeared now the Blade Light and Sword Shadow? However, he had no time to think about it. In the first instant, Fanzu and the Chaos Dao Lord attacked the Blade Light and Sword Shadow together. The next moment, the Thousand Blood Empress also joined the battle, and the pressure on the first dimension passage increased dramatically. Not good. Amidst a murderous roar, Violent Dragon suddenly entangled Gu Huang. The latter's expression changed drastically. The first dimension passage shook violently, as if it was about to collapse. A bolt of lightning suddenly appeared. How could he endure this? Chapter 3260. As a commander, it was not necessary for him to charge into the enemy lines. In particular, he had to protect the first-dimensional passageway. There was a huge difference between protecting it with all his strength and protecting it with a portion of his strength. Currently, the first-dimensional passageway Viral was completely overloaded. Even if he used all his strength to protect the passageway, it would still be difficult. No one was willing to back down. The experts of the Hongmeng Sea were also giving it their all. Even if they knew that once the passageway was destroyed, they might die in the dimensional space. However, there was no way out of this battle. Regardless of whether it was the Grand Simplicity Cultivators or Gu Huang, they were not cowards. Since they were here, they would naturally give it their all. Just as murderous Viral was about to restrain Gu Huang, Hekin arrived. His arrival made the passageway even worse. However, Hekin only needed a moment of eruption. As Gu Huang's extraordinary sword descended, he broke through the restraints of murderous Viral. The moment the latter retreated, his extreme break state disappeared, and the passageway calmed down slightly. At the back, Love and Hate Beal was fighting 1 against 3, breaking through Gu Huang's fine control and creating a chance for Hekin to break through. The passageway entrance was already open. Although Gu Huang's control over the laws of Hongmeng Sea was strong, being 1 step behind was equivalent to being many steps behind. How can Hekin's mastery over space was unparalleled in the passageway? The Primal Chaos Dowlord and the Thousand Blood Empress were both tied down by Love and Hate Beal. At this moment, the passageway in the Hongmeng Sea was finally showing its greatest weakness. Lightning pierced through everything. How can Hekin did not linger in battle and took Gu Huang's sword head-on? He did not even make a sound and instead increased his speed. Light flashed in front of him. Hekin was about to enter the Hongmeng Sea. Boom! With a thunderous strike, the image of Tai Chi appeared, and the domineering aura of the blade swept across. Hongmeng Viral exploded, forcing Hekin, who had half a foot in the passageway entrance, back. Lin Feng had finally arrived. How can this be? He knew that during the battle between Lin Feng and Invincible, when the passageway collapsed, Lin Feng was trapped in the dimensional space. How could he arrive in such a short period of time? It was impossible. However, Lin Feng had arrived in time. Lin Feng was like a fish in water in the dimensional space, as though it was his own backyard. This time, he did not recover his energy. Instead, he rushed to the first dimensional passageway as fast as he could. This was because he knew that the Netherkill clan, who were fighting with their backs to the wall, would likely burn all their bridges. As expected, you again. After easily blocking Lin Feng's blade, he instantly recognized who it was. He and Lin Feng had already met twice before, but had yet to exchange blows. As such, Hao Can had a deep impression of Lin Feng's unique energy and adaptability within the dimensional space. Yes, it's me again. Lin Feng had no confidence that he would be able to stay. How could he endure this? Especially now that he had expended a great deal of his energy. It could be said that he was completely exhausted from the battle with Invincible of 10,000 men. His opponent was too powerful. After fighting 3 tough battles in a row, Lin Feng was already an arrow at the end of its flight. How could he endure this? He was also one of the 3 strongest kings of the 9 hells. However, there was no way out. He could only fight to the end. You can't be thinking that you can stop me here, right? How could he endure this? He smiled. While dodging Lin Feng's blade, he also dodged Gu Huang's sword behind him. His mastery of space allowed him to move freely within the dimensional passage. Whoosh, a rainbow-colored light lit up. Chaos Dao Monarch finally recovered. He activated the 7-colored Chaos Boat and sealed the entrance. At this moment, Lin Feng had already noticed the battle in the first dimensional passage from the corner of his eye. The battle was extremely intense. Blade Light and Sword Shadow. Lin Feng and Fan Zhu were both stunned. Wasn't the one fighting with the world lords the same Blade Light and Sword Shadow that he had just killed? There was no mistaking it. No, the aura isn't right. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. He didn't have time to pay attention to Blade Light and Sword Shadow because his current opponent was how could he endure a super existence that was unique in terms of speed. Whether or not he could stay was the key to this battle. Chaos Dao Monarch and Gu Huang attacked at the same time, but how could he endure this? Even if he didn't unleash his brutality and soul flames, he was still the strongest world lord and wasn't any weaker than Gu Huang. He couldn't unleash his brutality. Viral had already reached its limit and had to use all his strength to barely hold on. Once he unleashed his brutality and soul flames, the dimensional passage would almost certainly collapse. However, if he didn't unleash his brutality, it wouldn't be easy for him to cross the line of defense of the Hongmeng Sea experts. His netherworld power surged, and how could he endure moved like lightning, looking for an opportunity? This is troublesome. Lin Feng could feel the weakness of the Hongmeng Sea experts. Whether it was Chaos Dao Monarch or Gu Huang, they had already expended a lot of energy after a series of fierce battles, let alone him. This was a competition of willpower and strength. Whoever could last until the end would win. However, the Netherkill race's Blade Light and how could he endure were still in their strongest state. This was extremely disadvantageous for the Hongmeng Sea experts. Sizzle, sizzle. Chaos Dao Monarch's expression changed. A corner of the 7-colored Chaos Boat's defense was forcefully penetrated by how could he endure it. He was very smart and chose the weakest Chaos Dao Monarch as the breakthrough point. Moreover, Chaos Dao Monarch was also a part of the defense. The entrance could be seen clearly. However, how could he endure his actions shook in an instant? Origin source. At the crucial moment, Lin Feng's spiritual shock struck how could he endure it. Although it didn't cause any effective damage to how could he endure it, the intense shock to his soul caused his movements to slow down and his netherworld power to scatter. This was unexpected. What a strong rebound force. This spiritual shock was forced. Lin Feng's injuries were more severe than how could he endure it. Fortunately, how could he endure it wasn't as strong as Invincible. Otherwise, Lin Feng would have been severely injured. Although it was only a momentary pause, it was enough for the 7-colored Chaos Boat to make up for the missing corner. On the other side, Gu Huang's sword fell and enveloped How Could He Endure It once again. The flaw this time made the powerhouses even more careful. After that, How Could He Endure It broke through the encirclement several times but was stopped every time. Although it was the first time Lin Feng and Gu Huang worked together, they had great chemistry. In addition to Chaos Dao Monarch's defense, the three strongest experts of the Hongmeng Sea worked together to restrain How Could He Endure It. However, the Netherkill clan was obviously not to be trifled with. How could he endure? It was one of the three strongest kings of the Nine Hells. After being trapped again and again, he naturally wanted change. He would not be blinded by the situation. He had chosen the best method. If he failed to attack the entrance of the dimensional passageway, not only would the Netherkill race not be able to conquer the primordial sea, but they would also suffer great losses. No matter the price, he had to succeed. He's going to use his soul flame. Gu Huang's voice sounded. Lin Feng also noticed the change in How Could He Endure It. His soul flame was different from invincible. One was domineering, while the other was as fast as lightning. How Could He Endure It seemed to have turned into a ray of light. Soul flame, flowing light. Chapter 32:61. Breaking Extremity was very powerful. However, soul flames were equally powerful. Breaking Extremity was a transcendental enhancement that exceeded one's limits. Soul flames usually added a special ability or strengthened one's advantages. The soul flame, flowing light, was the unique ability of every expert of the Netherkill clan. Just like the soul flame firmament, which was invincible, it was one of the 5 strongest soul flames of the Netherkill clan. The cultivation direction of the experts of the Netherkill clan was to cultivate as a whole at the beginning. When they had the soul flame, they would focus on strengthening their innate talents on the basis of a stable and comprehensive improvement. They would then become independent experts. A true Netherkill expert's characteristics had to be compatible with his soul flame. Only then could he unleash his greatest strength. It was like the firmament of soul flames that was invincible against 10,000 men, and the flowing light of soul flames. Chi. Swoosh. His originally terrifyingly powerful movement technique was now even more ghostly. Light and shadow flickered, and numerous afterimages floated within the dimensional passageway. It was as if there were thousands of he Kansas. In the entire Netherkill clan, only he could achieve such a level of speed within the dimensional passageway. Gu Huang's sword was fast, stable, and accurate. His killing intent was awe-inspiring, and his realm was extremely high. However, Deacon had the upper hand here. The Chaos Dao Monarch could only use the 7-colored Chaos Boat. Rather than saying it was 3 against 1, it was actually Lin Feng and Gu Huang working together. How could they endure this battle? If they fought openly, Deacon could easily win in the breaking extremity state, even if it was 1 against 2. However, he could not. In the soul flame state, the dimensional passage was already in danger. Even if he can constantly strengthen himself and defend with all his strength, he could only reduce the pressure. He could not maintain the pressure on Viral, which was far more powerful than the first dimensional passage. The first dimensional passage was like a cliff. The earth and rocks cracked and split open from the inside. Deacon knew that, so he did not accept the challenge. Even in the soul flame state, he could fight a group of experts. However, Deacon was very clear that the first dimensional passage would collapse before he killed all his enemies, especially Lin Feng and Gu Huang. These 2 powerhouses made him feel a lot of pressure. Even in the soul flame state, Deacon was not confident of killing them. His strength was not killing. Let's go. Under Hekan's ghostly movements and attacks, the Rainbow Chaos Arc was full of flaws and could not withstand it all. If it were Lin Feng or Gu Huang in control, it would be better. After all, their energy level was higher. Primal Chaos Dowlord was only at the threshold of the strongest World Lord, and there was a huge difference in strength between them, and he can bang. At the dimensional passageway entrance, the King of Destruction, Gu Huang exploded. The strength of the 21st level of the Hongmeng Pagoda was the Destruction Law of the 9th Order, which was condensed from slaughter step by step. And now, Gu Huang had cultivated it to the true innate realm, the limit of the Tao of Hongmeng. Combined with his sword formation, how terrifying was its power! Lin Feng didn't interfere, nor was he able to. After all, he and Gu Huang had never fought together before and weren't familiar with each other. Carelessly helping Gu Huang would only affect the other. Most of the time, Lin Feng would attack from time to time. Now that Gu Huang was going all out, Lin Feng naturally wouldn't interfere. Moreover, Lin Feng was thinking about another matter. The first-dimensional passageway. Why did he have to stop He Qian? With his and Gu Huang's strength, could they really stop He Qian? When he can use the soul flame flowing light, Lin Feng's 60% confidence dropped to less than 20%. The bottomless abyss made Lin Feng feel pressured. However, there was never only one way to solve the problem. What was the current situation? The Nethersha clan was at a disadvantage. 3 out of the 4-dimensional passageways had been destroyed, and only one was left. Indeed, the Hongmeng Sea would obtain a complete victory if they completely blocked the Nether Killer clan's attack and prevented He Qian from breaking through. However, they had underestimated the Nether Killer clan too much. The other party was obviously going all out this time. The appearance of the 9 Hells Kings, including the resurrected Sword Shadows, made Lin Feng's heart palpitate. The Nether Killer clan had cut off all means of retreat and was staking everything on this one throw. The chances of obtaining a complete victory were very slim. Instead of fighting for a slim chance, it was better to take a step back. Blue Frost Fairy Dust Lake. Lin Feng activated the Hongmeng source item with all his strength. The little Hongmeng viral in his body was released crazily. This was also one of the reasons why Lin Feng took a step back. After 3 fierce battles, he was also unable to bear the burden. Rumble, 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 the first-dimensional passageway, which was already at the edge of the scattered passageway, suffered Lin Feng's intense attacks like adding fuel to the fire. Under normal circumstances, Lin Feng's attacks would not be able to do anything to him. However, it was different now. The viral had completely exceeded his limits. The defense of the viral was like holding a handful of sand that could not be stopped from overflowing. Lin Feng's attacks were even more intense. Lin Feng's figure flashed past. His right hand pressed against the dimensional passageway's barrier. With a roar, the will of manifestation directly resisted the viral. The newborn calf was not afraid of the tiger, and he gave it his all. Hongmeng viral. Lin Feng did not have much left. However, the will of manifestation was still very full. Furthermore, Lin Feng's control of the will of manifestation was no longer the same as before. He could build dimensional passageways and destroy them. Even if the will of manifestation was not as strong as the will of manifestation, it could definitely obstruct and interfere. The will of manifestation itself was barely holding on. Under Lin Feng's 2-pronged attack, the first dimensional passageway rumbled as its energy dissipated. On the other side, how to endorse flowing light had already reached its limits. The flexible sword in his hand was like a swimming snake, fiercely clashing against Gu Huang's destructive sword formation. Although Gu Huang was indeed very strong, one could clearly see that he was the type that specialized in offense and not defense. Gradually, it became harder and harder for him to block how to endorse attacks. The intense collisions also increased the strength of the dimensional passageway. On Lin Feng's side, he did not hesitate to shatter the dimensional passageway. If it was Gu Huang, he might not be able to do so. However, Lin Feng's Hongmeng viral was able to do so. Lin Feng's will of manifestation was also able to do so. Bang! Gu Huang's destructive sword formation was finally shattered. How could he withstand Gu Huang's sword that was filled with killing intent? Transforming into a perfect ray of light, he rushed out of the dimensional passageway. At the same time, the first dimensional passageway was no longer able to withstand the enormous pressure. The will of manifestation's defense was declared a failure. Under Lin Feng's continuous attacks, all of its defenses collapsed. It was as though a cliff had collapsed, and there was no way to reverse the situation. The will of manifestation dissipated, and the viral of the dimensional passageway wreaked havoc everywhere. The tide-like attacks of the Netherkill clan froze at this moment. The first dimensional passageway collapsed. Chapter 3262. Netherkill Dimensional World, Yamquan Prison. A towering figure landed on the ground. His majestic aura made the experts of the Netherkill clan submit. Seeing the dimensional passage in front of him dissipate like smoke and dust, his expression was cold and solemn. Did he win, or did he lose? It was hard to determine. However, compared to Self-Improvement's original plan, this was undoubtedly a defeat. Moreover, he lost miserably. Hongmeng Si Lin Feng. I will remember you. Self-Improvement did not have any emotional fluctuations, as though everything had nothing to do with him. As the commander of the Nether Killer race, he had been plotting for more than 100 years. This time, the time was ripe. Originally, it was a victory that he was determined to win. He had constantly considered all the factors, including the participation of Taisher origin and the existence of Guhuang. He also had full confidence in attacking the dimensional passage and entering the Hongmeng Sea. However, he did not take Lin Feng into account. Not long ago, Lin Feng was an inconspicuous little fellow. Self-Improvement did not think that the fledgling Lin Feng could pose much of a threat to the Netherkill clan. However, he was wrong. His entire plan was ruined because of this. Self-Improvement did not have any unwillingness. He had done his best in this battle. Lin Feng's sudden appearance was not within his expectations. Even the most experienced commander could not avoid such unexpected changes. He could only say that everything was fate. So be it. Fortunately, Self-Improvement has gained a foothold in the Hongmeng Sea. At most, it will take some time to rebuild the dimensional passage. This time, it will be easier than the previous time. What was the most difficult thing about building a dimensional passage? Not being able to find the dimensional world. However, Self-Improvement was now in the Hongmeng Sea. It was too easy to find the exact location of the Hongmeng Sea in the dimensional world. Furthermore, the distance between the two dimensional worlds was not too far. It was very convenient to build a dimensional passage. However, before building the dimensional passage, I have to get rid of Lin Feng and Gu Huang. Self-Improvement already had a plan in mind. The Netherkill clan's king of 9 hells was invincible. He was an invincible warrior and an unpredictable assassin. Self-Improvement. He was the commander of the Netherkill clan. Although all 4 dimensional passages have been destroyed. However, the energy harvest this time is not small. Self-strengthening, unceasing took out a wrinkled black round pot from his bosom. He could clearly feel the energy overflowing from the pot, just like a kettle filled with water. Take it. Zichang Bushi tossed the wrinkled black round pot behind him. Whoosh! His murderous aura surged as he appeared in an instant and caught the wrinkled black round pot. He turned into a phantom and quickly disappeared. With this batch of energy, the Emperor should be about to complete his transformation and come into being. The unyielding figure that was constantly striving to become stronger was filled with ambition and power. His eyes flickered with radiance, and he was full of expectation. He was waiting. The entire Netherkiller clan was waiting. They were waiting for the birth of their emperor to revive the reputation of the battle tribe. The Hongmeng Sea was a must. Hongmeng's Twin Towers region, outside the first dimensional passageway. Chaos Dao Monarch, Fan Zhu, Dao Wuji, Thousand Blood Empress, and Creation Master, the 5 World Masters, were all gathered together. The 4 universe masters of the original Chaos universe stood behind them, as if they were facing a great enemy. In front of them stood 2 figures. Zichang Bushi's sword flashed. It's destroyed. Zichang Bushi looked at the collapsed first-dimensional passageway and sighed softly. Yes. Love-Hate Bieli frowned slightly. His masculine body's expression was somewhat charming. It was defeated by Lin Feng. Zichang Bushi did not have any expression of disappointment or regret. Even though he was surrounded by a group of Hongmeng Sea great beings, he was still at ease. I didn't expect Zichang Bushi either, Love-Hate Bieli said. Zichang Bushi laughed. He also has times when he miscalculates. Love-hate Billy pouted and did not say anything. Zichong Bushi did not have the right to joke about Zichong Bushi. Moreover, Love-hate Billy respected Zichong Bushi very much. I don't see Gu Huang and Lin Feng coming out. Zichong Bushi scratched his chin. The extreme breaking mark between his eyebrows flashed with a strange golden light. Should we wait? Love-hate Billy followed Zichong Bushi's lead. Let's wait. I have nothing to do anyway. Zichong Bushi sat on the ground. He did not care about the great beings of Hongmeng Sea around him. Love-hate Billy stood respectfully at the side like a guard. Even among the 9 Hells Kings, there were differences in status. Zichong Bushi was on the same level as Invincible and Zichong Bushi. His status was much higher than Love-hate Billy's. The 5 World Masters and other Universe Masters looked at each other, not knowing what to do. They could neither fight nor leave. Although there were only 2 opponents, even if one of them was Saber Light and Sword Shadow and used Breaking Extremity, there was no one here who could stop him. As for how to endure it, it was needless to say. Even if he wasn't good at killing, that was only relative to invincible and unceasing improvement. To these World Masters and Universe Masters, Zichong Bushi was scarier than the other 2 strongest World Masters, because of his space attainments and absolute speed. If Zichong Bushi wanted to kill them, no one here could escape. Hey, why are you still not leaving? Zichong Bushi suddenly turned around and looked at the great beings of Hongmeng Sea. All the great beings were stunned. You can leave. Love-hate Billy glanced at them and said indifferently, We're not interested in you, but if you want to die, I don't mind giving you a ride. Shua. The great beings of Hongmeng Sea changed their expressions. They did not know whether to laugh or cry, but they also felt like they had been insulted. But Zichong Bushi was telling the truth. They could not defeat him. Even Blade Light and Sword Shadow, who was the weakest, was stronger than Chaos Dao Lord. How could they fight him? Dignity? Face? Zichong Bushi was not trying to embarrass them. He was just telling the truth. Everyone knew that the Nethersha race did not like to kill the weak. If they really wanted to kill the weak, they would have done it 100 years ago in the Dimensional Passage. There was no need to wait until now. To put it bluntly, 5 World Masters and Universe Masters were not enough. Zichong Bushi could kill them all. Zichong Bushi could kill them all without using extreme breaking. The only ones they really wanted to deal with were Lin Feng and Gu Huang. However, the 2 of them had not appeared yet. They were still in the dimensional space. They're quite cunning. Zichong Bushi held his chin and said in boredom, They had so much fun fighting me in the Dimensional Passage just now. Now, none of them dare to come out. Zichong Bushi did not dare to act recklessly in the Dimensional Passage, but it was different now. He could use extreme breaking in Hongmeng Sea. Who would be afraid of him if he fought again? He was worried that he would not be able to fight enough. Although Zichong Bushi was cautious, the blood of the Nethersha race still flowed in his body. It was instinctive to fight. Moreover, Gu Huang and Lin Feng were the stones that were obstructing them. They had to be removed. Chapter 3263. In the dimensional space, Lin Feng did not know where Gu Huang went. After the first dimensional passage collapsed, he could no longer sense Gu Huang's aura. However, Lin Feng stayed in the dimensional space and did not leave for the time being. Why did he leave? Compared to the Hongmeng Sea, the dimensional space was his home ground. Furthermore, he had fought continuously and his energy was almost depleted. He needed some time to recuperate. Luckily, I managed to buy some time. Lin Feng felt that he was lucky. If the first dimensional passageway had not collapsed, the primordial sea would have been in big trouble. How could they defend the entrance? They had to constantly strengthen themselves and defend the passageway. No one could destroy it. When that happened, the Netherkill race experts would continuously enter the Hongmeng Sea through the dimensional passage. Without mentioning anything else, the Hongmeng Sea would be completely destroyed by Invincible. Although Gu Huang could enter the Hongmeng Sea now, he was alone. Even if he could kill only a limited number of people, it was impossible for him to conquer the Hongmeng Sea alone. If I'm not wrong, their next step is to rebuild the dimensional passage. Lin Feng absorbed the energy of the dimensional space and slowly recovered Hongmeng Viral. The Nine Hells Kings should be able to sense each other and determine the location of the dimensional world. Then, they can build the dimensional passage. It won't be easy to destroy it this time, unless I could defeat Gu Huang. There was a Nine Hells King at each end of the dimensional passage. How could he destroy it? Lin Feng could not think of any other way for now. Fortunately, building the dimensional passage required time, especially since the distance between the two-dimensional worlds was not close. Furthermore, the dimensional passage needed to be stable and reinforced. Only when Viral had enough weight could it pass through the Netherkill race experts. This period of time was neither long nor short. Lin Feng had previously returned to the Hongmeng Sea from the Netherkill dimension world. He had traveled through the dimensional space for close to 10 years. His speed of materializing his will might be faster, but with the reinforcement of the dimensional passage and the increase in weight of Viral, he calculated the time. It could take as little as 10 eras, or as long as 20 to 30 years. There was still a chance. To the current Lin Feng, 10 eras could do many things. However, the strength of the opponent this time was no joke. He was one of the strongest kings of the Nine Hells. Lin Feng had fought with Invincible before, and Invincible was stronger than him even before Broken Extremity. However, Lin Feng's raw strength was slightly weaker than Invincible's, and before Broken Extremity, they should be on par with each other. Having fought before, Lin Feng had a rough understanding of Hikon's strength. If Hikan had used Breaking Extremity, he would have been completely crushed. Could 10 eras really surpass how to endure? Lin Feng wasn't sure, but now he could only go all out. At the very least, the Taichu is already in my internal universe. I don't have to worry so much. Lin Feng seized the time to recover his energy. He had also gained a lot from this battle. Regardless of whether it was killing the saber lights and sword shadows, the bitterness was over and the sweetness was just beginning, or the battle with the invincible 10,000 men. All of them had given him a bountiful harvest. Hongming's Twin Towers area. Whoosh. He had been sitting cross-legged and patiently waiting all this time. How could he endure standing up? His stature couldn't be considered tall, but it made the hearts of Hongming's experts palpitate. It was because of his tyrannical strength. They won't be coming, Love and Hate said, because they are very smart. No matter how he endured it, he didn't take it to heart. He knew that his strength was not enough, yet he still fought. That was a foolish thing to do. Should we look for them? Love Hate Beal asked. There's no point. How could he endure this? The Hongmeng Sea is so big. Where are we going to find it? It's a waste of time. Let's leave it at that. If they want to come, then they can come. If they don't want to come, then so be it. Have you located it? Not yet. Love Hate Beal shook his head. How could he endure this? That fellow who is constantly striving for self-improvement is really dilly-dallying. He still hasn't located it after so long. Self-improvement has many things that need to be done. Love and Hate parting was very respectful towards self-improvement. Forget about him. How could he endure this? Invincible Man was too lazy to build the dimensional channel before. He will definitely slack off this time. Love and Hate Beal said. Invincible Man has no interest in war. He only likes to cultivate and fight. He must be frantically tempering himself now. This fellow is indeed crazy. How could he endure this? How could he endure this? He admired Invincible Man. In terms of strength, he was the weakest of the three strongest kings of Nine Hells. Self-improvement was the strongest of the previous generation of the Netherkill clan. He had roamed the Netherkill dimensional world for countless eras. On the other hand, Invincible Man became the king of Nine Hells later than he, but became the strongest world lord earlier. His strength was also higher than he. Then let's wait a little longer. How could he move his body? The life weapon in his hand flashed with a bright luster. He looked at the group of Hongmeng Sea experts behind him and blinked. Why aren't you leaving? Do you want to spar? The expressions of the Hongmeng Sea experts changed. With the 5 world lords leading the way, they retreated in a split second. With great tacit understanding, they quickly disappeared from How Could He? What a joke. This spar could cost them their lives. He did not care. He did not want to spar with these weaklings. It was a waste of time. He might as well comprehend the sword himself. All right, love-hate Beal. You have been in the Hongmeng Sea for so many years. What else have you found? Hongmeng's Twin Towers. Love-hate Beal pointed at the tall Hongmeng's Twin Towers. Other than the insect world, there might be something my clan needs there. Oh, how could he? How could he? His eyes flickered. Dimensional treasure? I'm not sure. It might be, but it might not be. Love-hate Beal's gaze was deep. As far as I know, it has existed since the birth of the Hongmeng Sea. Until now, no cultivator in the Hongmeng Sea has been able to get close to it. That's because they are weak. How could he? How could he? His soft sword vibrated gently. Interesting. Continue to guard here. I'll go take a look. Yes. The majestic Hongmeng's Twin Towers was like a huge beast crawling. The pressure it emitted was relatively strong. The experts in the Hongmeng Sea were unable to get close. However, how could he? How could he? How could he? At this moment, he was already standing in front of the Hongmeng's Twin Towers. Chi! His natal weapon landed on the Hongmeng's Twin Towers. Suddenly, a huge force descended like a thunderbolt. White light condensed into a beam and blasted towards he. How could he? Oh, self-defense function. How could he? How could he? How could he? If it was invincible, he would have taken it head-on. However, how could he? 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 The dimensional space was vast. Anything could happen. This Hongmeng's Twin Towers was obviously not a treasure from the Hongmeng Sea. It came from the dimensional space. Chapter 3264. Whoosh. Hua. His figure flashed and dodged the white beam of light. His reaction and speed were astonishing. When you are far away from the Twin Towers of Hongmeng, nothing will happen. How could he bear to approach the Twin Towers of Hongmeng again after putting away his life-bound weapon? This time, there were no more white light beams. It is indeed a self-defense function. How could he use his vigorous will to resist the intense pressure of Hongmeng's dual polarity pagoda? His eyes were filled with deep shock. This isn't will pressure. This is anti-dimensional suppression. He reached out his hand and touched Hongmeng's dual polarity pagoda. Well, he had no intention of attacking. Hongmeng's dual polarity pagoda would not attack. Just as he had expected, this was a self-defense function. It's a very special material. Unheard of. In terms of texture and hardness, it's very strong. He frowned and felt a headache coming on. I can't tell. It would be great if self-improvement was here. Among the Netherkill clan, the one with the most seniority and experience was self-improvement. In terms of knowledge, how could he be inferior? But at least he was stronger than invincible. They circled around Hongmeng's dual pole tower and carefully inspected it. However, they didn't find anything special about it. The tower was covered with all kinds of secret carvings. The Nethersha clan wasn't proficient in this, so they couldn't understand it. However, he also knew that these mysterious runes contained a powerful force, and if he attacked them, he would definitely be injured. The entrance is here. How could he find the only entrance? The secret patterns above were even more complicated, faintly flickering with golden light, as if energy was flowing. The entire pagoda was sealed, and there was only one way to enter. Unfortunately, there was no key. He couldn't open the door unless he forced his way in. How could he not be so impetuous? He flew up into the sky after observing for a dozen times. He wanted to see what was at the top of the Hongmeng dual polarity pagoda, whether there were other entrances, how the pagoda looked like, and what kind of existence was the Hongmeng dual polarity pagoda. Oh, how could he endure this with a dignified expression? The higher he flew, the closer he got to the top of Hongmeng's Twin Towers, the stronger the pressure became. It was so strong that even he found it increasingly difficult to resist. Soul flame, flowing light. How could he endure this? His eyes burned. Regardless of the consequences, his intense curiosity made him want to know the secrets of Hongmeng's dual polarity tower. His body turned into a stream of light, forcibly breaking through the pressure and speeding toward the top of Hongmeng's dual polarity tower. The ultimate speed tour through the Hongmeng Sea. However, he was only halfway through the pagoda and still couldn't see the top. How could he endure this? Extreme break. The golden warped W on his forehead flickered with a peculiar luster. How can endure the power that had not erupted in the dimensional passageway, had erupted here? His strength had increased explosively, completely surpassing his limits. At this moment, how can endure the full force of his strength as he flew towards the top of the Twin Towers in Hongmeng? However, breaking the limit didn't mean everything. The closer he got to the top of the tower, the stronger the pressure became. It was like an invisible hand was forcibly restraining him, making him unable to take another step forward. Although the extreme break was still erupting, his speed had already been slowed to the extreme. Looking up, he still couldn't see the top of Hongmeng's Twin Towers. What a fellow! A golden light flickered between How Can Endure's eyebrows as he retracted his strength and descended. He didn't feel the slightest bit depressed. Instead, he was filled with joy. This was because he knew that this was definitely a huge treasure. The strength of the pressure was even greater than his extreme break state. If this was a dimensional unique treasure, how powerful would it be? If it wasn't a dimensional unique treasure, it would definitely be a transcendent existence. Steadily landing on the ground. How Can Endure the extreme break state stared intently at the only entrance to the Twin Towers in Hongmeng. That golden door was filled with mysterious runes. His life weapon clanked lightly as underworld energy surged violently. At this moment, he really wanted to break through the door and directly attack this mysterious golden door. However, How Can Endure the urge? In his extreme break state, he couldn't even break through the pressure of the Hongmeng's Twin Towers. The possibility of him breaking through the door was close to zero. It was more likely that he would suffer a counterattack from the Hongmeng's Twin Towers and be injured. At this stage, How Can Endure the urge to not be injured? He still had a mission to complete. I'll think about it at length when the self-improvement process arrives. The light in between How Can Endure's brows gradually disappeared, and his bright eyes were filled with joy. If he didn't guess wrongly, this Hongmeng's Twin Towers would be a huge, unexpected gain for the Nethersha clan this time. In the dimensional space. After a period of cultivation, Lin Feng's Hongmeng Virile had gradually recovered. During the continuous battles, he had used the Hongmeng Virile without restraint, causing the Hongmeng dimensional physique to continuously improve. After taking over the Taichu's Origin Chaos universe and perfecting the universe in his body, Lin Feng's life level had greatly increased. Although he was an almighty, the upper limit of the Hongmeng dimensional physique had increased tremendously. He wasn't any weaker than the strongest world lord. If he could cultivate to the limit, he would naturally be powerful. This was because the Nethersha clan's Nine Hells King was only the strongest world lord. Even if his combat skills were outstanding, his energy level was still at the level of the strongest world lord. After breaking through, he would generally reach the limit of the strongest world lord. Lin Feng's Hongmeng Virile was unique. The virile contained within was the nemesis of all other types of energy. Unfortunately, this was a conventional path that couldn't be achieved in a short time. Lin Feng could cultivate in the dimensional space and accumulate energy to the limit step by step, reaching the limit that the Hongmeng dimensional physique could withstand. However, this wasn't something that could be achieved in a short 10 years. It was impossible even in 100 years, unless there was a great opportunity. However, the chances of encountering such a great opportunity in the dimensional space were too slim. What could he do in 10 years? My goal is to reach the limit of the strongest world lord in the state of breaking through. Lin Feng sighed. Although the pressure on his body was great, it filled him with fighting spirit. This kind of pressure could often dig out one's greatest potential. He's not invincible. Although his physical body is strong, he's still a level away from invincible. Even after breaking through, I won't be at a disadvantage. He's fast, but I'm stronger. Although Hongmeng Virile hasn't reached the limit, I won't be at a disadvantage in this aspect. If I want to rely on energy to suppress him, it might be a little difficult. Lin Feng could completely estimate how strong he's in the state of breaking through. Lin Feng's advantage was in the art of concealment. However, against the Nethersha clan, whose physical conditions were equally outstanding, Lin Feng might not necessarily have an advantage. If I want to rely on techniques to defeat him, my attainments in the art of concealment will advance by leaps and bounds. The chances are even lower. It was actually very simple to fight with ease in the art of concealment. He could either suppress him in one aspect and gain the upper hand, or he could maintain a balance in every aspect and fight on the spot to see whose explosive power was stronger. Lin Feng's only advantage now was that he had a basic understanding of his strength, but his understanding of him wasn't very deep. Furthermore, he still had a considerable amount of time to prepare. He might have a chance. Chapter 3265. Lin Feng recalled the battle with the Mingsha clan. The battle with Invincible left the deepest impression on him. It was a pure battle. Lin Feng didn't gain much from killing saber lights and sword shadows. His battle with How to Endure was only a slight clash. Neither of them had exerted their full strength. However, this battle with Invincible 10,000 men was a real battle of swords and spears. And Invincible had a lot of guidance. Domineering intent is too weak. This was what Lin Feng remembered the most. Lin Feng's strongest move, Tai Chu's origin, was created by observing Invincible's fist technique. He borrowed a lot from it. Although it was integrated with the concept of Tai Chi, the essence of the origin was still Invincible's fist technique concept. Beyond the source level, Lin Feng's comprehension of the so-called domineering intent had reached the source level. Even if the concept of Tai Chi was separated, Tai Chu's origin was still a pure source-level absolute art. After integrating with the concept of Tai Chi, he had faintly touched the ceiling of the source level. The improvement of the life level caused Lin Feng's comprehension of the realm to also improve by leaps and bounds. But to reach the domineering intent of Invincible, there was still a long way to go. At the very least, he had to break through to the source level. In the Hongmeng Sea, if he could break through to the source level and create an absolute art beyond it, it meant that he had reached the limit of the path of Hongmeng. It was very difficult. This required an epiphany and a long period of accumulation and battle. The Hongmeng Sea itself has power shackles. It's actually very difficult to comprehend beyond the source level. In the dimensional space, there are no restrictions and there's no limit to power. It's easier to comprehend. Although this was the case, Lin Feng still wasn't confident. And even if he created an absolute art beyond the source level, would he be able to win? How to Endure. The Mingsha clan's combat skills were quite strong. How to Endure sword moves were also beyond the source level. Therefore, it was too difficult to defeat him. The only thing he knew was that if he could create it, he could at least fight. In addition to domineering intent, the other thing that needs to be improved is the weapon. Lin Feng felt it most vividly in the battle with Invincible. It was still okay to fight the Mingsha World Master, but the strongest World Master's life weapon made the difference. Invincible's life weapon was even stronger than the strongest Hongmeng source item. How to Endure was the same. It was normal. After all, for the Mingsha clan was born, and their life weapon was born. Their life weapon, their mind. It took a lot of effort to cultivate it. The Nether Killers had no other items other than their natal weapons. However, Lin Feng's weapon wasn't even the strongest primordial origin item. Dominating Hongmeng's source. If they wanted to fight the Netherkill clan head-on, they would be at a great disadvantage if their weapons were too inferior. In fact, Lin Feng could have chosen the strongest Grand Mist origin item weapon when he was choosing the hidden reward. However, Lin Feng had not chosen it. Firstly, it was because the weapon had recognized its master and it required a lot of effort to use it perfectly. Secondly, Lin Feng already had a plan in mind. Hua Hongmeng Viral wrapped Lin Feng's hand. A silver-white framed book appeared in his hand. It was as thin as a cicada's wing. By asterisk weapon condensation art, Lin Feng flipped open the book once more. He had originally thought that the reward from the investiture of the Gods Challenge was of little value. However, after obtaining the Defying Heart technique and the Defying Heart technique in succession, Lin Feng gradually began to pay attention to it. This secret technique wasn't useless. Its essence and use was to strengthen weapons. Lin Feng hadn't thought much of it before because it would cost a lot. In order to upgrade a sovereign primordial chaos origin artifact to the strongest primordial chaos origin artifact, it would require the same amount of energy as 10 strongest primordial chaos origin artifacts. Similarly, the amount required to upgrade a sovereign primordial chaos origin artifact to the strongest primordial chaos origin artifact would require at least 3 to 4 sovereign primordial chaos origin artifacts. It was too much of a scam. From Lin Feng's point of view, with so many strongest Hongmeng source items to condense weapons, it would be better to use them directly. It would be a waste of effort. Furthermore, he didn't have any strongest Hongmeng source items at that time. Thus, condensing weapons would be a waste of effort. Now, Lin Feng also didn't have that many strongest Hongmeng source items. However, he had dimensional treasures. Condensing weapons didn't necessarily require the strongest Hongmeng source items. In fact, Lin Feng could even borrow energy from other sources in the dimensional space. The energy here was limitless and inexhaustible. It might not be possible to condense high-grade weapons, but Lin Feng was confident in condensing a dominating Hongmeng source item to the strongest Hongmeng source item. As such, Lin Feng hadn't chosen a blade when he had chosen the hidden reward. Although he hadn't been in the dimensional space for a long time, he still had a few unreliable and useless dimensional treasures on him. They were perfect for sacrificing and condensing snow jade. I'll refine snow jewel while refining the white tower of light. Lin Feng planned. The reward for the 21st floor of Hongmeng Tower was the strongest Hongmeng source item from the dual polarity tower. Previously, he hadn't had the time, but now, Lin Feng planned to refine it. After all, he couldn't do anything else while condensing snow jade. After that, he would see how strong this white tower was. Compared to the other strongest Hongmeng source item, the blue frost fairy dust lake, he would see which one was more suitable for battle. Time was limited, so he would naturally choose the easiest place to improve. The insect world was a very special dimensional world. This was because it couldn't exist alone as a dimensional world. The insect world was usually attached to other dimensional worlds like parasites, absorbing the energy of other dimensional worlds to reproduce and survive. I've finally arrived. A proud and aloof figure stepped onto this land. The land was barren and riddled with holes. Black, super black, an insect race could be seen everywhere. The powerful devouring power was filled with destruction. The aloof figure gently waved the emperor's sword in his hand, and the surrounding land trembled. Countless insect race members were turned into ashes. Gu Huang. So, this is the insect world. Gu Huang's gaze swept across the surroundings. During the calamity of Tai Shi, he had already discovered the passage between the Hongmeng Sea and the insect world. After that, he had permanently sealed this passage. However, this time, Gu Huang had once again opened the passage to the insect world. This was because he knew that this was his only chance. A huge amount of energy destruction. So, this is the insect world. Gu Huang's eyes were profound. He didn't have much feelings for the Hongmeng Sea, but if the lips were gone, the teeth would be interdependent. If the Hongmeng Sea was attacked by the Nethersha race, Tai Shi Origin's chaotic universe wouldn't be able to stay out of it. The people there were his people, ordinary people who believed in him. As their king, he naturally had to protect them and do his best to do so. Gu Huang wasn't Lin Feng. He couldn't take over Tai Shi Origin's chaotic universe, so he could only do his best to protect it. Not for anything else, but for the people who believed in him to live in peace and contentment. The Nethersha race had to be eliminated. The limit of the strongest world lord. With the emperor's sword in hand, Gu Huang was full of arrogance as he entered the endless insect world alone. His steps were firm. I just need to take one more step to reach the limit of the Tao of Meng and become the controller of Hongmeng. Then I will have nothing to fear. Chapter 3266. Time passed quickly. Although the Nether Killer clan and the various experts of the Hongmeng Sea did not fight, they were all making their own preparations. As the commander-in-chief, constantly striving for self-improvement, had settled some trivial matters after the end of the war. After that, he and love and hate parting set up a dimensional passageway. Other than constantly striving for self-improvement, murderous aura and graceful beauty also set up a dimensional passageway with love and hate parting. However, they were only ordinary kings of 9 hells. Whether it was strength or control of their will, they were far from ceaseless improvement. The dimensional passage was only built as a backup. If they really wanted to conquer the Hongmeng Sea, one dimensional passage was enough. If there were too many, Embark would not be able to protect them all. After observing the twin towers of the Hongmeng Sea for the first time, Embark went there several times to investigate carefully. He was very interested in this super treasure from the dimensional space and believed that it would be a great harvest. Satisfied, Embark did not run around. He guarded the dimensional passage together with love and hate goodbye and waited patiently. Anyway, the dimensional passage would be completed soon. When ceaseless improvement and invincible army arrived, everything would be settled. The Netherkiller clan would definitely win this war. On the Hongmeng Sea side, the 5 world lords returned to the origin chaotic universe and set up a backup plan. They moved some potential newcomers and bloodlines into their own internal universes to protect their descendants. However, they also knew that the chances were slim. Once the Hongmeng Sea was conquered, they would have nowhere to go. They could not find a new dimensional world, and going to the dimensional space was even more suicidal. The only way to survive was to find a remote corner of the Hongmeng Sea and survive. After all, the Netherkiller clan was not known for their numbers. Even if they occupied the Hongmeng Sea, they could not expand their power to the entire Hongmeng Sea. Although they would still be swallowed by the Netherkiller clan in the end, at least they still had a glimmer of hope. It's up to Lin Feng and Gu Huang. Yes, us old guys are useless. The Netherkiller clan even thinks it's too much effort to kill us. It shows how weak we are. There's still roughly 10 great eras left, and then everything will be set in stone. If we can't kill him, how can we endure it? Hongmeng Sea is destined to be destroyed. Gu Huang and Lin Feng teamed up and couldn't do anything to him. In the Hongmeng Sea, once he uses Break Extremity, his strength will reach the limit of the strongest world masters. No one will be his opponent. It's not that I'm disheartened, but everyone should be mentally prepared. Don't have too much hope. Alas, the time is too short. Gu Huang is only 1 step away from Mengji Dao. Lin Feng appeared out of nowhere, and his talent is even more shocking. If he was given a little more time, the Underworld Killer clan would not be so arrogant. Wait patiently. There will be results soon. It was indeed not negative energy, nor was it looking down on Lin Feng and Gu Huang. Instead, it was to recognize reality. He knew that the only thing left in the Hongmeng Sea was miracle. In such a short period of time, how far could Lin Feng and Gu Huang go? To be able to reach the limit of the strongest world lord, how could he bear to defeat him? It was too difficult. Carrying the hope of the entire Hongmeng Sea, Lin Feng and Gu Huang both gave it their all. Compared to Lin Feng, Gu Huang was more aggressive. He knew about the insect world and how dangerous it was. However, the more dangerous it was, the greater the chance. At a time like this, he had to take the risk. Gu Huang did not want to regret. Without destruction, there could be no construction. Gu Huang was in the endless super blackboard. There were thousands of big yin worms. He and Lin Feng walked 2 different paths. One was Hongji Dao, the other was Mengji Dao. There was no good or bad luck. Everyone had their own choices. Mengji Dao was more difficult. Not only did it have high requirements, but it also had high requirements. If one step was wrong, it would be difficult to reach perfection. Gu Huang had reached the limit of Hongji Dao long ago, but he could not advance in Mengji Dao. This was related to him, and also related to the Taisher disaster that the Taisher origin chaotic universe experienced. However, Gu Huang had extraordinary perception. He was very clear about his own advantages and knew what he had to do to reach the limit. The trip to the insect world was originally part of his plan. He just wanted to go when he was more confident. Gu Huang did not expect a miracle, and he could not rely on Lin Feng. He had relied on himself since he was young. That was why he carried the entire Taisha disaster and turned the tide. It was in the past, it was now, and it would be in the future. In the dimensional space, Lin Feng was upgrading the grade of Snow Jade. The secret technique of the Xian weapon condensation art was not complicated. With Lin Feng's life, level, and perception, he had already mastered the secret technique. The real difficulty was in the materials. It required a considerable amount of materials to refine it. This was a refining process. At the same time, it had to ensure the quality and endurance of the weapon itself. This had very high requirements for the cultivator who used the secret technique. Fortunately, Lin Feng's ability to control his strength was very strong, and he had enough materials. The first item he obtained was the green jade bead necklace. Although it had sentimental value, Lin Feng was not interested in it. It was useful if it could be used. It had to be said that this green jade bead necklace was not cheap. Even Viral could not destroy it. Although it did not have much energy, its quality was far better than Snow Jade. The essence of the weapon condensation art was to change. It changed the composition of other materials to form the required weapon. Snow Jade was a Hongmeng origin item. In order to form the strongest Hongmeng origin item, it required a considerable amount of materials. Although the green jade bead necklace was a dimensional treasure, it lacked energy. It was just that the material was not cheap. Lin Feng then refined the second dimensional treasure, the metal ball seed. This dimensional treasure was the exact opposite of the first one. Its material was not much, but the seed itself contained a considerable amount of energy. Although Lin Feng had wanted to use it as a Hongmeng origin item, in the end, he still refined it as a material. After all, the metal ball seed could not be used as a main attacking method. It could only be used as a hidden weapon for a sneak attack. The metal ball seed would not be of much use if his opponent was in the broken extreme state. Furthermore, other than dimensional treasures, Lin Feng did not have many Hongmeng origin items that he could use to refine the strongest Hongmeng origin items. The third dimensional treasure was quickly used up. This dimensional treasure that he had just obtained did not have much use. Sometimes dimensional treasures were a scam. What he obtained might not be suitable, and what he used might not be strong. Fortunately, he could use it to its full potential. After refining this unique dimensional treasure, it's about time for the Warblade's Snow Jewel to advance. Lin Feng could clearly feel that Snow Jade's current state was a level higher than when it was a Hongmeng origin item. It had to be said that the Xian weapon condensation art was quite unique. As the refinement of Snow Jade continued, the refinement of the strongest Hongmeng origin item, the White Light Pagoda, came to an end. Chapter 3267. The strongest Hongmeng source item was not only powerful, but it also required a considerable amount of energy to refine. However, not only was Lin Feng's life rating extremely high, but the refining effect of Hongmeng Viral was also top-notch. The white light tower lit up with a milky white light, which was extremely beautiful in the dimensional space. In an instant, Lin Feng's mind became clear, and he could clearly feel the integration of the tower and a huge amount of energy entering his body. At the same time, everything about the white light tower appeared in his mind. The spirit of my way. Lin Feng was slightly stunned and felt a little confused about the name of the white light tower. It seemed to be completely unrelated to the Hongmeng bipolar tower that he had expected. However, regardless of the shape or energy of the white light tower, it was very related and had a very deep origin with the Hongmeng bipolar tower. Lin Feng refused to believe that there was no connection between the two. It's actually a control-type item? The method of controlling the spirit of my way appeared clearly. What was beyond Lin Feng's expectations was that it was not as complicated as the Blue Frost Fairy Dust Lake. It was like a flying sword and had a very strong offensive and defensive ability. The key to controlling the spirit of my way was to resonate with it and control it. The other was the controller's own strength and controllability. A control-type treasure could attack from a long distance. For Lin Feng, It actually conflicted with his close combat ability, and its power was not as good as his blade techniques. In actual combat, it was not as good as the blue Frost Fairy Dust Lake, which was a domain and control-type treasure. However, a control-type treasure still had an advantage in terms of long-distance control and attack flexibility. In particular, Cannon's body movement and speed were too fast, and his attainments in space were extremely high. Even if he did not use Break Extremity, Lin Feng would be at a disadvantage in this aspect. Once he used Break Extremity, he would be completely restrained. Having the strongest control-type Hongmeng source item with a variety of attack methods was not necessarily a bad thing. Moreover, the Spirit of My Way seemed to have hidden abilities that had not been discovered. The information in his mind only mentioned a few words, and it was more about the control level of the Spirit of My Way. However, Lin Feng could still learn some of its uniqueness from it. It was also part of the My series. Previously, he had obtained 3 secret techniques of the My series. Like the strongest Hongmeng source item, the Spirit of My Way, they all came from the Hongmeng Bipolar Tower. Lin Feng had a feeling that the mysterious Hongmeng Bipolar Tower was inextricably linked to the Bipolar Tower. Coincidentally, when he ascended to the 21st floor of Mengji Tower, this treasure was given to him. If he could master it, it would come in handy. Moreover, it's not as difficult to control as the Blue Frost Immortal Dust Lake. One needs to comprehend the primordial laws of life to reach the grand perfection stage. Lin Feng's Spirit of the Bipolar Tower, Bipolar Bees of the Bipolar White Light, the Bill. It's control it. Feng was precise, my way of the my, bipolar my the Lin, my bipolar my it. Bipolar Tower emitted a milky white light. It was of the same origin as the energy within the Hongmeng Bipolar Tower. It contained a powerful energy, and as long as it was perfectly controlled like most control-type treasures, it would be able to erupt with a relatively strong power. If I'm fast, I'll be able to perfectly control the strongest Hongmeng source item in 2 to 3 years, compared to the Blue Frost Immortal Dust Lake, which he had no confidence in reaching perfection in a short period of time. Lin Feng was more inclined to control Bipolar Tower. At the very least, it was a treasure that could steadily increase his combat strength. After completing the refinement of Bipolar Tower, Lin Feng began to absorb the energy of the dimensional space, strengthening the Hongmeng dimensional body. He had to make full use of every minute. On the other hand, the refinement of Snow Jade was gradually coming to an end. The 3-dimensional treasures were not bad, and they complemented each other very well. If there was a need for a 4th-dimensional treasure, Lin Feng would not be able to take it out, as he only had 3-dimensional treasures on him. When the 3rd-dimensional treasure had less than 20% of its energy remaining, Snow Jade was no longer able to be refined. Just like how the Hongmeng virile within his body had reached its limit, the quality of Snow Jade had also reached its limit. Hiss, the energy was overflowing, and it was extremely pure. Following the control of Lin Feng's secret technique, a silvery white light flickered around Snow Jade, appearing like a thick layer of snowflakes and resplendent starlight. Time after time, the refinement caused Snow Jade to be reborn, and its energy to increase explosively. Oh! Lin Feng could feel that the connection between him and the Snow Jade Battle Saber's weapon spirit had also deepened. After this refinement, he had become even closer to the Snow Jade Battle Saber. The degree of compatibility between him and the Snow Jade Battle Saber did not decrease because the Snow Jade Battle Saber had become stronger. The bi-asterisk weapon condensation art is indeed a unique secret technique of the highest quality. Lin Feng sighed. The silvery white light enveloped his body, and energy crazily surged into Snow Jade. The transformation of Snow Jade was akin to a butterfly emerging from a cocoon, and it had become completely new. Snow Jade's energy and might in its normal state had already surpassed the 4th stage of its strongest state. If he had refined a new Hongmeng origin blade, he would have to cultivate it again. Now, however, he did not need to do anything and could perfectly control it. Furthermore, His compatibility with Snow Jade was even higher than before. It was as if they were one. The by** weapon condensation art had consumed more treasures and materials, but at the same time, it had saved him a lot of time. Clang! Snow Jade let out a high-pitched cry, and the artifact spirit of Ning Qiong appeared in the air. It was more than 10 times larger than before, and it was extremely majestic. Its originally dim image was now extremely real, as if a real divine beast had appeared. Furthermore, there seemed to be a new layer of energy within its body. The energy of Hongming's dual polarity pagoda. Lin Feng could feel that it was exactly the same as the energy contained within Gai Wei's spirit. The strongest Hongmeng origin item. Holding the battle blade, Snow Jewel, Lin Feng was quite satisfied. Although it might not be as good as the life weapons of unrivaled 10,000 and unbearable world lords, it was not too far off, and they were on the same level of power. Compared to the life weapons of world lords, such as Blade Light and Sword Shadow and Sweet Beginnings, it was not inferior at all. To cultivators who engaged in close combat, a good weapon that was compatible with them was extremely important. Not only could they better unleash the power of their blade moves, but they could also gather more energy. Their techniques and realms would also be enhanced. Creating a blade technique is twice the result with half the effort. Lin Feng waved the newly born blade, Snow Jade, and used the heart-following secret technique. As he was already at the peak of the origin grade, his comprehension was undoubtedly deeper, and he vaguely had a better understanding of the tyrannical intent that unrivaled 10,000 had mentioned. This feeling of being reborn instantly made Lin Feng feel as if he had been enlightened. Saber moves often required an instant of enlightenment. Lin Feng, who originally wanted to master the control of Gai Wei's spirit after condensing Snow Jade, decisively gave up on cultivating the control technique and devoted himself to creating a new blade technique. This kind of instantaneous inspiration could only be encountered by chance. The feeling of crossing over to the origin grade. The feeling of being reborn. Chapter 3268. When cultivating, if one did not have a reference, it would be very difficult to break through. This was because one needed to imagine and try to touch the bottleneck. Everything was unknown. It was like trying to find a direction in a boundless desert. It was very confusing. However, if one had a direction and a goal, cultivation and comprehension would be twice as effective. Lin Feng had naturally come into contact with secret techniques that surpassed the origin grade, and not just once. Invincible, How to Endure, and even Solitary Glory all had extraordinary combat techniques and realms. Especially the battle with Invincible, it was more like a sparring session. Lin Feng had a deep understanding of the tyrannical intent that surpassed the origin grade. The newborn Snow Jewel was filled with boundless vitality. From the dominating Hongmeng source item to the strongest Hongmeng source item, Lin Feng had condensed it single-handedly. He had completely comprehended it, and this feeling was the most natural and clearest. The strongest Hongmeng source item was one of the strongest powers in the Hongmeng Sea. It directly pointed to the limit of the path of Hongmeng. In addition to Lin Feng's attainments, which had reached the dimensional realm, and the comprehension he had gained from the battle with the Netherkill clan expert, it was like 100 rivers returning to the sea. All of this converged and rushed towards the limit of the path of Hongmeng. Rebirth. Lin Feng did not walk the path of Invincible's tyrannical intent. Other people's tyrannical intent was ultimately someone else's. Moreover, Invincible's tyrannical intent was cultivated and comprehended according to his own characteristics, abilities, environment, and other factors. It might not be suitable for him. The same domineering aura, when placed on different cultivators, would be completely different. Moreover, Lin Feng had tried it when he challenged the Hongji Pagoda. The Netherkill clan's intent realm was more or less different from the Hongmeng Sea's path of Hongmeng. Even if he could comprehend it, it might not be the limit of the path of Hongmeng. Lin Feng was born in the Hongmeng Sea and grew up in the Hongmeng Sea. No matter how one looked at it, the limit of the Hongmeng Sea's path of Hongmeng was the most suitable for him. The moment Snow Jewel was born as the strongest Hongmeng source item was the most crucial moment. This was also the reason why Lin Feng was willing to give it his all. At that moment, he saw what he wanted. He saw hope. It was as if the dawn had suddenly appeared, and everything was in his heart. Clang! As the weapon spirit appeared, the compatibility between Lin Feng and the battle saber Snow Jewel became even stronger. The battle saber Snow Jewel, which had been upgraded by the weapon condensation mystic art, possessed a mysterious and powerful power. As if he could feel the pulse of the battle saber Snow Jewel, Lin Feng slowly drew his saber. It was very slow as Tai Chi, however, each of his movements was extremely precise. At this moment, countless thoughts and saber moves appeared in Lin Feng's mind at every moment. The same saber move and saber force were constantly changing, overlapping, and correcting. It was exactly the same as when he was tempering the War Saber Snow Jewel. Lin Feng had already grasped the brightest spot on Snow Jewel. The current Lin Feng also had the ability to gradually expand that point and reveal it bit by bit. 1 era, 2 eras, 3 eras, time flew by quickly. To Lin Feng, it was as if time had stopped at that moment. Fortunately, Vera would not cause any harm to Lin Feng. Otherwise, just resisting the pressure from Viral would be enough to interrupt this moment of enlightenment. Comprehending one's realm in the dimensional space was much stronger than comprehending one's realm in the Hongmeng Sea. The level of strength in the dimensional space was different. In the Hongmeng Sea, surpassing the source rank was equivalent to touching the ceiling. However, in the dimensional space, surpassing the source rank was like a gust of wind. It was nothing. Therefore, it was easier to raise one's realm in the dimensional space. However, cultivating in the dimensional space was not easy. Only a freak like Lin Feng could be so unrestrained. Other cultivators, including the strongest world masters, would not dare to do so. Of course, the most important thing was still the individual. Lin Feng was in the dimensional realm. It was naturally much easier for him to comprehend a realm surpassing the source rank. In terms of life force, how could he endure it? Unrivaled and solitary brilliance were both higher. If the Netherkill clan's 9 Hells King could comprehend it, so could Lin Feng. Boom! After fusing with the power of Snow Jewel's new weapon spirit, it released the power of the strongest Hongmeng source. Hongmeng Viral wreaked havoc, and even the dimensional space seemed to tremble slightly. It was full of hope, full of vitality, and endless vitality. It was as if the earth had just opened, and all living things had recovered. It was full of vitality. There was no domineering concept, but it had its own unique power. It had fused with the level 9 Hongmeng laws of life and eternity, truly reaching a level surpassing the source rank. Its power was so strong that it surpassed the Taichu source in all aspects. The 5th move of the Dark Murdering Blade technique, Rebirth Super Source. This was the first blade technique that Lin Feng had created that surpassed the source rank. When he created this move, the pinnacle of the path of Hongji was no longer a secret to him. The 7 level 9 Hongmeng laws were deeply imprinted in his heart, and the path of Hongji was incomparably intimate. This was especially true for life and eternity. Originally, they had reached large success, but at this moment, they had both reached the Great Circle. The power of the Hongmeng Sea that surpasses the source rank is actually closely related to the level 9 Hongmeng laws. Lin Feng wielded his battle saber, Snow Jewel, in a clear and natural manner. At this moment, he was confident that if he could comprehend more perfect Tier 9 primordial chaos laws, he would be able to create more saber arts that surpass the origin grade. Once he understood, all would be clear. However, this was only the power of the Hongmeng Sea that surpassed the source rank. It was not the Netherkill world, nor was it the dimensional space. Similarly, there were differences between those that surpassed the source rank. For example, the Rebirth Super Source that he had just created was inferior to the sword techniques of solitary brilliance, and he can endure. As for comparing it to Invincible, it was even more inferior. So, invincible is actually so strong. When he really stepped into this level, Lin Feng finally felt the strength of invincible. No wonder he had only comprehended a little of his fist technique's concept and reached the source rank. It was because Invincible's tyrannical intent was very strong. Even if he comprehended a little of it, it was already quite impressive. There's still time. While perfecting the details of the blade technique, I'll also ponder over the control of the spirit of Tuo Wei. Lin Feng was in a good mood. It had not even been the 10th era, but he had already completed the goal he had set previously. Snow Jewel had advanced and created a blade technique that surpassed the source rank. As for the remaining time, he only needed to completely control the spirit of Tuo Wei to increase his attack methods and attack power. Although he still did not have much confidence in dealing with he can endure, at least he had the strength to fight. Let's see how much I can improve in the remaining time. Who knows? There might be some unexpected gains. Lin Feng's fighting spirit was high. This was a battle that he had to win. If he lost to he can endure, what awaited the Hongmeng Sea would be a disaster. Even if Lin Feng had moved the Taichu into his internal universe, he did not wish for the Hongmeng Sea to end up like this. However, is the Netherkill clan attacking the Hongmeng Sea really because the Netherkill dimension world is about to be destroyed? Lin Feng became more and more confused about this. Chapter 3269. Hongmeng Sea, Netherkill dimensional world. 3-dimensional passageways stood tall. 2 of them were still faintly discernible and had yet to be completed, while 1-dimensional passageway was already in its embryonic form. The Netherkill race experts continuously rushed over and entered the Hongmeng Sea through the dimensional passageway. How can he guarded the dimensional passageway out of boredom, watching the Netherkill race generals enter the Hongmeng Sea, followed by the Netherkill race marshals enter the Hongmeng Sea, and finally, the Netherkill race helm masters enter the Hongmeng Sea. The weight of the dimensional passageway's viral was gradually increasing. However, there were still no 9 Hells Kings entering. Although self-improvement could strengthen the dimensional passageway, it was on the premise that the dimensional passageway was sufficiently stable. The dimensional passageway was still in its newly constructed state, and the weight of the viral of the 9 Hells Kings was too high. As for the 2 strongest world lords, self-improvement and invincible world, it was even more difficult for them to enter the Hongmeng Sea through the dimensional passageway. However, they did not need it. How can he was in the Hongmeng Sea alone? Who could defeat him? Self-improvement and invincible world could do it, but were there any cultivators in the Hongmeng Sea who could do it? Furthermore, how terrifying was how can after breaking through his limits? How powerful was his spatial mastery? Even if self-improvement and invincible world could defeat him, they would not be able to kill him. There should be no need to prepare a dimensional passageway, Love and Hate said. There were a total of 3-dimensional passageways, and self-improvement was the fastest and most stable. Murderous and graceful were only ordinary 9 Hells Kings, so the dimensional passageway they built was naturally a preparation one. Yes. How can he cans sword casually, as though he was drawing in the void, and his afterimages formed beautiful patterns. With self-improvement's construction speed, he will be able to pass through the 9 Hells Kings in half an era at most. It doesn't make much difference whether they come or not, Love and Hate said. How can he smiled and said, you can't say that. The main force in developing the insect world must be the 9 Hells Kings. Hell Masters and Marshals can only be assistants, and their abilities in other aspects are still lacking. The insect world is a rare energy storage in the dimensional space. Love/hate separation side. It's too rare. Of course it's rare. They are existences that are dependent on others. However, the insect race's instinct is to devour. They devour the dimensional worlds that they are dependent on before destroying themselves. It's too difficult to find a place like the Hongmeng Sea. Obtaining the insect world is an opportunity for our tribe to grow stronger. Love and Hate Bieli's eyes twinkled. How could he endure this? He slowly sheathed his sword and looked at parting Love and Hate. It's a pity that you've been in the Hongmeng Sea for so long, yet you still haven't found the passage to the insect world. Love-Hate Beale shook his head. There must be a passage to the insect world in the Tai Beginning Origins chaotic universe. Unfortunately, it was sealed by Gu Huang after the calamity of Tai Beginning. No one can enter the Tai Beginning Origins chaotic universe. My original body was too weak. I was no match for him. How could he bear to raise his eyebrows? You're still not his opponent now. Love and Hate Separation did not mind the ridicule and continued. Not long ago, there was an outbreak of insects in Taichu. We had a chance to find the passage to the insect world, but unfortunately, sighing softly, he shook his head. I know. It was destroyed by that little guy called Lin Feng. How could he bear laugh? He still thinks you're a spy for the insect race. He doesn't know that your original intention was not to help the insect race, but the Nether Killer clan. Love and Hate Separation said, the insect race is nothing to be afraid of, but the passage to the insect world is extremely difficult to find. If the insect race has the absolute upper hand, they will surge out of the insect world in large numbers. At that time, the passage to the insect world will be easy to find. Actually, I would like to meet that little guy, Lin Feng. How could he bear to keep his smile, his soft sword trembling? It's a pity that I haven't been able to fight him with my full strength. Strictly speaking, how could he bear to say that he had met Lin Feng 3 times? The first time was when Lin Feng accidentally entered the Nether Killer dimension. How could he bear to chase after him? The second time was when Lin Feng was destroying the passage to the 3rd dimension. However, this time, it was not Lin Feng who ran away, but how could he bear to leave cautiously? The 3rd time was when how could he bear to break through the 1st dimension? That was the first time they had crossed swords. However, how could he bear to fight 1 against 3? His goal was not to kill Lin Feng, but to enter the Hongmeng Sea. They had crossed swords 3 times and failed to win. He is not your opponent, Love and Hate Separation said, but he will definitely come. How could he bear narrowed his eyes and looked at the dimensional passage? And that Gu Huang will definitely appear. They will not let us build the dimensional passage. Even if he comes, he will be courting death. Love and Hate Separation raised his head slightly, looking very proud and aloof. In his opinion, the Nether Killer clan was invincible, especially since how could he bear to be one of the 3 strongest kings of the 9 hells? A mere cultivator from a Hongmeng Sea was nothing to be afraid of. Perhaps. How could he bear to think so lightly? In the dimensional space, Lin Feng stayed for a full 10 eras. It wasn't a particularly bountiful harvest, but at least it was a fruitful one, and he had achieved his goal. It was extremely difficult to rapidly increase one's strength in such a short period of time. Lin Feng believed that he had already reached his limit. The rest was up to fate. Let's give it a try. Rai Wei's spirit. A white pagoda of light appeared on the back of Lin Feng's hand. It flickered with a translucent light, and he could control it as he wished. This was the strongest primordial item from the 21st floor of Mengji Tower. Currently, Lin Feng could perfectly control it, and it did not disappoint Lin Feng. In addition to its strength and power, Rai Wei's spirit had perfect control and also had a special ability to break through space. Break through virile space. It was not that Rai Wei's spirit was stronger than virile, but it had a special characteristic that allowed it to avoid virile. Lin Feng did not know what this special characteristic was, but it was not very special. It could avoid virile and space at the same time. Therefore, its attacks were very special. Not only were the directions unpredictable, but it also completely ignored the resistance of space. Although Lin Feng had never really used it in actual combat, he believed that for He Can, who had extremely high attainments in space, this would be an excellent trump card that could contend against him. Xiao. Lin Feng sped back to the Hongmeng Sea. In the dimensional space, he was like a fish in water. While absorbing the energy of the dimensional space to strengthen his Hongmeng dimensional body, Lin Feng explored his surroundings to see if he was lucky enough to obtain 1 or 2 more dimensional treasures. Even if he could not use them, he could at least use them as materials to condense treasures. Basically, The average quality of dimensional treasures could reach the level of the strongest Hong Meng origin items. Lin Feng's luck was naturally not that good, and he had encountered a dimensional treasure. However, the dimensional passageway that had appeared before his eyes was real. This wasn't the first time Lin Feng had encountered one. However, this dimensional passageway was undoubtedly newly constructed. Everything was brand new, translucent, and fragile. Book Guest House. Chapter 3270. The Netherkill race was probably puzzled as well. They had thought that Lin Feng and Gu Huang might be hiding somewhere, but they had never thought that Lin Feng would stay in the dimensional space for the past 10 years. This was completely unimaginable. Just resisting Viral alone required a lot of energy. As for attacking in the dimensional space, one would need to possess the strength of the strongest world lord to be able to overcome the suppression of dimensional energy. Lin Feng was also a little stunned. He had thought of many ways to resist and increase his strength. He had also prepared for the worst, but he had forgotten the simplest method, which was also what he had been doing in the previous battle, destroying the dimensional channel. Indeed, to enter the dimensional channel, one had to pass through the layer of defense. As for the other entrance, it was in the Netherkill dimensional world. However, he did not need to do that. He could directly enter the dimensional channel from the dimensional space. Looking at the newly constructed dimensional channel, Lin Feng did not know whether to laugh or to cry. Would it take much effort to destroy such a dimensional channel? Even if the strongest world lord was guarding it, his current attacks would not be weak. He could resist Wang Zhong's absorption of willpower, but he could not resist Wang Zhong's direct destruction unless he also appeared in the dimensional channel. However, was that possible? The strongest world lord had a weight of 1,000 viral. No matter how much he suppressed his own power, the dimensional channel would not be able to withstand it. Furthermore, he had to kill Wang Zhong. The huge energy fluctuations caused by the battle would definitely cause the dimensional channel to collapse. Come directly. Lin Feng was also a decisive person. He released Hong Meng Viral and quickly broke through the dimensional channel's barrier. Hua! The blue frost immortal dust lake appeared, enveloping the dimensional passageway. Grand mist dimensional energy rumbled as it was released. The entire lake was dotted with specks of starlight, looking extremely beautiful. The battle blade in Lin Feng's hand, Snow Jewel, emitted the image of a divine beast, Ning Qiong. The might of his strongest Grand Mist origin item was unleashed. The current Snow Jewel was no longer the ordinary battle sword of the past. Chi! With one slash, the dimensional channel shook violently. Netherkill, dimensional world. Not good. Zichang Bushi's expression instantly changed. It was very rare for someone like him, who did not show his emotions on his face, to show such fluctuations in his emotions. A massive amount of willpower energy solidified in the dimensional passageway, while the extreme breaker imprint on Zichang Bushi's forehead sparkled with golden light. Almost instantly, the power of unceasing improvement skyrocketed. Clenching his teeth, the surging netherworld power surged like a huge river, crazily gushing towards the dimensional passageway. However, the face of the self-strengthening, unyielding spirit grew uglier and uglier. If it was just weakening the energy of the dimensional passageway, he could still make up for it. If it was just a simple normal attack, he could also defend himself. But his opponent's attack was too powerful. At lightning speed, one of the dimensional passageways had already been blasted into smithereens. Viral had corroded the passageways, causing them to be unable to repair themselves. The golden light of the nether energy surging around his body flashed, and the extreme breaker mark between his brows gradually dimmed. His expression returned to its cold state, and he could not hide the disappointment in his eyes. The construction of the dimensional passageway failed once again. He could repair the shattered dimensional passageway, but what use was that? In the time it took him to repair it, his opponent could probably tear apart dozens of holes in the dimensional passageway. If the source of the problem could not be solved, repairing it would be a waste of energy. Lin Feng, as the creator of the dimensional passageway, the self-strengthening, unyielding spirit naturally knew who the culprit was. From Lin Feng destroying the dimensional space, entering the dimensional passageway, and then releasing his attack, everything was under the watch of the self-strengthening, unyielding spirit. However, what use was that? The current Lin Feng was no longer someone that the self-strengthening, unyielding spirit could deal with. In fact, he's become stronger again. Dimensional realm. There's actually such a talented cultivator in the Hongmeng Sea. The self-strengthening, unyielding spirit had always been paying attention to Lin Feng. In his evaluation, Lin Feng was even higher than Gu Huang. This was because Lin Feng's life force had reached the dimensional realm, but Gu Huang had not. Although Gu Huang currently had the advantage in terms of combat strength, Lin Feng's future prospects were undoubtedly broader. Furthermore, Lin Feng's growth was very fast, very fast. He improved in battle after battle. The previous defeat of the Netherkill clan was due to the addition of Lin Feng. This is troublesome. The self-strengthening, unyielding spirit frowned and felt a headache. His meticulous plan had been ruined once again, and the key was that he still could not find a way to solve it. Even if he's at the dimensional realm, there's no reason for him to be like a fish in water in the dimensional space. How did he do it? The self-strengthening, unyielding spirit pondered. The current situation was not bad, but they were in a stalemate. Although the other side had the upper hand, they had not found the passageway to the insect world. It was equivalent to gaining nothing. What did they want the Hongmeng Sea for? It was not suitable for the Netherkill clan to reproduce there. What they wanted was the insect world and the mysterious tower that the self-strengthening, unyielding spirit mentioned. As long as Lin Feng was not eliminated, he could destroy as many dimensional passageways as possible. The dimensional passageways were connected to two large dimensional worlds. It was impossible to hide in the dimensional space. As long as one had the intention to search, they would definitely be able to find it. However, to eliminate Lin Feng, only he, invincible, and the self-strengthening, unyielding spirit could do it. The self-strengthening, unyielding spirit was very clear about Lin Feng's strength. During the battle that day, the self-strengthening, unyielding spirit had died under Lin Feng's blade. Now that Lin Feng had become stronger, even the self-strengthening, unyielding spirit might not be able to kill Lin Feng. Only he, an invincible spirit, had the confidence to succeed. Invincible spirit could not be relied on. He could only rely on himself. It was very difficult. For the first time, the self-strengthening, unyielding spirit felt powerless. Previously, he did not think that conquering the Hongmeng Sea would be difficult at all. The combat standards there were too low, and it was a waste of good resources and cultivation environment. However, now he had miscalculated. From the looks of it, it seems that we can only hope the self-strengthening, unyielding spirit can do it. The self-strengthening, unyielding spirit rubbed his head. He could not think of a solution at that moment. Lin Feng was a huge variable that was completely outside of his plan. Furthermore, it was deeply rooted. The Hongmeng Sea, Hongmeng's two poles tower area. The self-strengthening, unyielding spirit stood up, stunned on the spot. Beside him, the self-strengthening love and hate Bieli looked over in surprise, not understanding what was going on. The self-strengthening, unyielding spirit's dimensional passageway has collapsed. The self-strengthening, unyielding spirit was stunned for a long time before he muttered, "What?" The self-strengthening love and hate Bieli turned pale with fright. How did this happen? Lin Feng did it. The self-strengthening, unyielding spirit shook his head, deep fear in his eyes. He is still in the dimensional space. He has the ability to survive in the dimensional space and also has the strength to destroy the dimensional passageway. The self-strengthening, unyielding spirit knew that Lin Feng was very mysterious. They had bumped into him twice in the dimensional space, and both times they could not do anything to him. Lin Feng's attacks in the dimensional space were not hindered by Viral at all. This was something that the self-strengthening, unyielding spirit could not understand. Since he could not understand it, the self-strengthening, unyielding spirit had categorized it as a special ability. Now, Lin Feng's special ability had left the Netherkill clan at their wits' end. Chapter 3271. He could not think of a solution despite constantly striving for self-improvement. Similarly, Bear could not think of a solution. It was impossible for him to chase after Lin Feng in the dimensional space. In a vast and boundless dimensional space, even if he wanted to find Lin Feng, he wouldn't be able to do so. Even if his attainments in space were extremely high, the strength that Lin Feng had displayed in the dimensional space caused him to feel despair. Even if he used Extreme Break, Bear was not confident that he could defeat Lin Feng in the dimensional space. "It's him again," Bear murmured. The previous incident with the insect tribe had been ruined by Lin Feng. This time it was him again. If I had known, I would have gotten rid of him long ago. When Lin Feng was still weak, Bear actually had the chance to kill Lin Feng. However, the arrogant Netherkiller clan would not do such a thing. He did not kill Lin Feng then, and he could not kill him now. The strength of love and hate separation was not much stronger than the original Saberlight and Sword Shadow. Moreover, he was still using the physical body of Saberlight and Sword Shadow. If he were to fight Lin Feng with all his might, he would definitely be defeated. Whoosh! Bear's expression changed slightly. After a while, Bear shook his head speechlessly. The murderous dimensional space has also been destroyed. Only the graceful dimensional space is left. Bear did not expect that the Netherkiller clan's attack would be destroyed so easily. It was completely unexpected. Bear smiled bitterly. "It's not far away." Bear was silent. Yes, the dimensional space that was constantly striving for self-improvement had been destroyed. The murderous dimensional space was also destroyed. How could the graceful dimensional space remain unscathed? Lin Feng was able to survive in the dimensional space and attack from there. No one could do anything to him. As long as he was around, the dimensional space could not be built. "Let's go." Bear was carefree and did not show any disappointment. "Where to?" Bear was stunned for a moment. "To find the insect world's dimensional space." "Are we just going to wait here?" Bear smiled faintly and did not mind. "If you can't do it, don't force it. With Lin Feng around, do you still hope to build a dimensional space?" "But..." Bear hesitated. "No buts. Remember, our target is the insect world. Even if self-improvement and the others arrive, we still have to find the passage to the insect world. But it's not easy to find the passage to the Taichu's insect world." Love/hate parting frowned. She had been searching for traces of the passage to the Taichu's insect world for the past few eras, but to no avail. "Who said we're going to Taichu?" Although Taishu's calamity and the insect calamity have been quelled, the tunnel to the insect world can't be destroyed. Instead of looking for an incomplete tunnel to the insect world, it's better to look for a tunnel to the insect world that has already been formed. Genesis Supreme. Love and hate separation felt as if they had been hit in the head. She had completely forgotten. For a long time, the primal origin chaos universe had been completely sealed. No one could enter it, not even her. The primal origin chaos universe, guarded by Emperor Gu Huang, was like a forbidden area that no one could enter. Although this forbidden area was still sealed, the situation was completely different. On his side, how could he take it? So what if Gu Huang tried to stop them? They could just charge in. How could he take it? Genesis Supreme's tunnel to the insect world should have been sealed. But as long as we're patient and look for more clues, I believe that even if it's just the two of us, we can find the tunnel within 100 years. "Okay." Love/hate separation replied. Just as how could he take it? Obtaining the insect world was the true goal of the Netherkill clan. In the dimensional space, Lin Feng sighed softly. At this moment, he was very close to the Hongmeng Sea. It was because of this that he could find all three-dimensional tunnels and destroy them one by one. It wasn't easy to build a dimensional tunnel, but destroying it was easy. As long as Lin Feng was willing, he could return to the Hongmeng Sea very quickly. Although Lin Feng couldn't break the barrier of the Hongmeng Sea's dimensional world, he could build a dimensional tunnel directly in the dimensional space and connect it to the Hongmeng Sea. This short distance was much easier than connecting two-dimensional worlds. Only Lin Feng could do it. That was because the dimensional space posed no obstacle to Lin Feng. If it were any other strongest world lord, they wouldn't be able to play any tricks in the dimensional space, unless their strength was stronger than Viral's. So, I have plenty of time now. Plans were one thing, changes were another. Although Lin Feng planned to compete with He Can, he also knew that he only had the strength to fight one battle at the moment. Based on his chances of winning, it was probably between 10% and 20%. Unless he suddenly erupted during the battle, or if He Can's condition wasn't good, Lin Feng's chances of losing this battle were very high. Since that was the case, was there a need to fight? There's plenty of time. I can at least wait for another 10 eras. Let's take it slow. If he had another 10 eras to prepare, he would definitely be stronger than he was now. Not to mention other things, just absorbing and strengthening the Hongmeng dimensional body was enough for Lin Feng to increase his strength by 20% to 30%. If there were other improvements, he could increase his strength by 50% to 70%. He reckoned that he would be able to fight He Can as an equal. Fighting as an equal, only such a battle would be interesting. Lin Feng smiled and dispelled his plan to return to the Hongmeng Sea. Instead, he continued to train in the dimensional space. However, even if he returned to the Hongmeng Sea now, He Can would have left long ago and set off for the Taisher origin chaotic universe. Stay in the dimensional space? Lin Feng wasn't that stupid. The dimensional space was filled with mysteries and unknowns. Lin Feng could freely travel to any place. Staying in one place was too wasteful. Traveling around was the right way to go. Who knew what benefits he would encounter? If his luck was ordinary, he could rely on his sensory abilities to find dimensional treasures. Lin Feng really needed dimensional treasures now. The Battle Blade Snow Jewel had already been upgraded to the strongest Hongmeng source item. He didn't have any other treasures. For example, the World Lord equipment could be upgraded by one level using the by asterisk weapon condensation art, as long as there were enough dimensional treasures. I'll follow my heart. Traveling is also very useful for cultivating the by asterisk heart compliance art. If I can cultivate the heart compliance art to the great perfection stage, my strength will increase by another level and cultivation will be easier. After tasting the benefits of the by asterisk weapon condensation art, Lin Feng was even more confident. For treasures like the Mountain Core World Incarnation and the 100 million 8-front formation, which he had already mastered to the great perfection stage, he could upgrade them to the next level. Furthermore, he didn't need to master the ability and Hongmeng laws again. This was too important for him, who was in urgent need of time. His strength would increase directly. Other cultivators might find it difficult to find materials to upgrade, but it was very easy for Lin Feng. There was a high probability that dimensional treasures were purely made of materials. I'll head in the direction of the Netherkill dimensional world. It didn't matter which direction he traveled in. Lin Feng still hoped to be more cautious. If the Netherkill race built another dimensional channel, he could destroy it again. In any case, he wouldn't give the Netherkill race any chance.